but usually as soon as Christmas gets done with, I can start breathing and actually putting my mind into motion on all the goals that I've been planning on for next year. So you guys locked and loaded with your 2022 real estate goals?
Yeah, right.
So I don't know what Robert told everybody about this class, but this is a hiring class, right? Who's been to the full career visioning class before? 1, 2 of you, okay. Remember how long that was? That was 2 days, a full 2 days, normally the career visioning, and then they do a third full day for, once you've hired someone, the 30, 60, 90, how to train them up. And then the last half is just ongoing, how you lead and motivate someone. So this class normally is 2 full days. And if anybody's like me, I have ADD, so I like to teach the really, really fast version of this. But most of you are probably in this room because you're looking at your 2022 goals, and there's probably a hire or 2 hires or more that you've got in your 22 plans, right? So maybe if you guys don't mind going around, I'll introduce myself in a second, but if you don't mind just introducing yourself, how long you've been in real estate, and maybe just tell me what maybe are some of those dreams or intentions or goals that you've got on who's missing in your world right now. It's been crazy. The bigger my life has got, and I heard, Gary Keller talk about this for a long time of just, a lot of times when you're building your business, you're thinking about the what, the why, the hows. But as the bigger my business has got, like my mind has naturally gone to who's going to be the person that drives this, who's the talented person that's going to build this, right? So this day is about the who for you. Okay. So let's start over here. So name, how long, and then who's your missing people this year?
So I'm Leslie Shaw. I was going to start off with great. So the 7 years in real estate, I think the who for us as a team is just not that we don't have the right who's in place, but we just need more of a training system. So it's either getting things figured out and then either self-select out to find the real solid pieces, or we just need to firm things up.
Okay, let's go up here, Eric.
Oh, Eric Dugler, been in business 5 years, and then this year just want to grow a team of like 5 agents with an admin. For this year.
And you have 1 or 2 already, right?
2. Well, and then the third one getting their license.
And there are 2 are agents.
2 are licensed agents.
Okay. Not on the admin side yet.
No.
Okay. Robert, what about you?
I'm Robert McFarland. I been in the business for 6 years, technically 7, but 6 years actually selling real estate. I'm looking to hire administrative staff both for the brokerage, but then also leaning into hiring for the team as the team grows. So transaction coordinator, but more of an operations person.
Right.
Yeah.
What's your team look like right now?
Just a small team, just 1 admin, 1 other sales agent on the team, so just 3 of us.
Great.
I'm Tyler Hall. I've been in the business about 9.5 years now. Same, hire a TC/operations management specialist. Maybe a buyer's agent. If we need it.
Great. What are you?
Blake Bolter, been in the business for 15 years. I've been working with, initially when I got in, we were working with my parents, and mom decided to be grandma, so I've just been working with my dad for the last 15 years, and he just moved and retired, and so now I'm a lone wolf in this world. Still don't know. So I'm looking at growing, but trying to figure out how, for me, it's how do I let someone else take on that business that I trust issues is probably a good thing, right? Try to make sure that they will give them the right service. And that, I guess, is what this is going to be, is who do we hire so that I can divvy off that role.
Yeah.
And then I've also been talking, and maybe 1 or 2 of my kids may want to join and start the business with me too. So I'm trying to figure out how I can build a team, if that is actually in my
Great.
wheelhouse.
Great. Okay.
Sherry Roundy, I've been in real estate for 8 years. I've hired and fired 3 admins. Proud to say. Very frustrating. Now I use a TC that works for several agents. And I'd like to eventually hire some buyer's agents to help me in a full-time admin.
Great.
I'm hesitant because they were good experience. I felt like I trained them and trained them and trained them and then said, thanks, bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Okay. Okay.
Holly Val.
I've been in business for 8 years. And I do have a team within the same thing that kind of went through a couple people. And taking the training, I realized my differences and what I've gathered and kept and what I've lost and why I ended up with those people and wasting money.
Yeah.
So I'm just here to refresh
Great.
and what's missing in my role is buyer's agent.
Okay.
I've already got one tracked down.
Great. Cool. Okay.
Chuck Jensen, and I've been in real estate for 3 years now. Been a part of a couple different teams and had good experience in both of those instances. But the last 6 months, been on my own and just trying to get things going, build up business. But looking at probably the middle to the end of the year, part-time assistant / transaction coordinator.
Okay. Great. In the back.
Hunter Fowler, I've been an admin for a year, but now transitions for agent on my S.
Yeah, Bill Fowler, and our biggest opportunity this year is to replace Hunter as he goes into that role, and we have a TC, but we do full-time admin.
Cool. Okay. Anybody on Zoom want to introduce yourself?
Feel free, jump in. Sarah's.
I'm Sarah. Hello.
Sarah.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Hi. I'm on my way, I promise. I'm always late. Sorry, Johnny. I'm coming. I'm Nicole Briggs. I've been a real estate agent for 15 years. And I'm looking for a couple things. I need an assistant, a full-time assistant. And I've been running my business by myself for about the last 6 months. So there's no better way to know what you need than running your own business. So having an assistant would really be super helpful. And then I'm looking to add possibly one more buyer agent. And I've retained my agents that are hopefully on this call. They're supposed to be on this call. I've retained my agents for the last 3 or 4 years. So how to make a similar hire to make sure that they're a right fit for my business.
Great. Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's jump in. So I know some of you threw out some questions, so I want to try to answer those as we go through it. So this really, I'm down here for you guys. So if we need to stay longer, end short, we can go whatever direction you want. The meat and potatoes, I just really want to walk through. You know, one of the most underutilized tools in Keller Williams system is our Keller personality assessment. And it's not just a behavioral assessment, but it is a consulting guide on how to navigate through the hiring process so you don't cheat the process. But I would contest that 99% of our dang agents cheat the process somewhere in this hiring process and end up making a less probable decision that someone's going to work out. So that's part of it is Keller Williams has set up a hiring structure. And above any other company out there, Keller Williams just does a good job of teaching our rainmakers how to go attract talented people into the organization. So I'll tell you, I was telling Bill earlier, there's that check mark. This is, you've probably heard of this check mark before, but this is when you're an individual agent. This is where you just bring on a few people and become a group. And this is where you actually start gelling and become a team. And this represents your earning capabilities, your earning potential. A lot of times as an individual agent, you have a really great high earning potential, right? You go out and attract a bunch of sevens, into your organization, you end up feeling like you're spending more time, harder working, and you're going to net more money, and your earning potential actually goes down. And part of that is you'll see a lot of people even just want to stay solo, or they'll get in this phase and they'll be like, holy heck, I'm out of here, and they'll retreat back to who raised it yet, right? Who's ever done that? And And part of that, it is solely based on your leadership, it's based on systems that you're creating, but it's also fully based on the talent level that you bring to your organization. Because once you can actually get past that group and become a team, that is where your earning potential just becomes exponential. It really is awesome, but again, you have to do the work to get past that. Otherwise, there's a vast majority of our industry that should just stay solo agents. And that's great, that's a cool job description, make a bunch of money and just go buy a bunch of real estate. That's fine, right? But if you're in the room because you actually want to go gain a lot of leverage and go with that power through it, that's awesome. We can talk about that, okay? So just to introduce myself real quick, there's a bunch of you that first time meeting in person. Right now, my role is the regional director for the state of Utah. So Matt Green, who you might have known, jumped out a couple years ago, I replaced him. So I've been the state director for 2 years. I was Robert's role in the Westville office for about 10 years. So I was a team leader, and I'll tell you that role for me, managing real estate brokerage, helping agents, coaching agents, but I did a lot of agent hiring and a lot of just, staff hiring is really the role that just forced me to just by repetition, learn how to hire better. So that was a great role for me. I grew that office from about 60 to over 300 agents, the one there in Warren, Westfield. I'm now the operating partner of that office. So I replaced and hired a team leader the last couple of years. I like teaching, but I like teaching people that are going to go do something about it. I don't like teaching the bottom 80% of our company because I want it for them more than they want it for themselves. So I like teaching this type of group. That's usually why I navigate to the top courses. But then also, if you didn't know, I put a group together and I launched Argentina for Keller Williams. So we've got 8 offices down there, 400 agents. So I own a quarter of the country, basically. I like to say that.
Yeah. Very cool. I heard Brazil, they just launched Brazil, right?
Yeah,
That'd be
I
great.
don't know if it's gonna be the whole country or if it's just São Paulo or whatever, but yeah. But I think Brazil's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
And they launched China, it didn't go well a couple of years ago, and they unlaunched China, I guess. So China still is an open country, which I'm sure that's a very difficult country to navigate, but. Yeah, but Argentina's awesome. They'll tell you even all this hiring stuff, like I learned it specifically for my real estate team. I learned how to get really good at it. But now that I'm in so many different things, it is the exact same skill set that is totally interchangeable no matter what business I've got myself into. I'll talk about my team in a second because that's really what we're here to talk about. But I'm a big investor. I tell Bill that I wake up in the morning and love investing, and tomorrow even we'll talk a little bit more about investing if any of you are coming across tomorrow. But we own 4 commercial buildings. We own 30-ish units, and we've got a bunch of developments going on that will probably take us to the hundreds of units pretty soon. We also, in Westfield, we launched a title joint venture, insurance joint venture, and a mortgage joint venture. So I've been involved in kind of whole bundled services type of thing. That's been great. But Red Sign Team, really has been my bread and butter, my meat and potatoes. I started selling, got into business 15 years ago. Started selling part-time when I was finishing my degree, started selling full-time. And I, like some of you have, I actually have a 50-50 partner. So we've really just gelled together. 1 + 1 = 3. Clay Winder, if you know him, but we partner up on our real estate team. We've owned it for 15 years. This year we're wrapping up. We'll end somewhere around 360 transactions, about 140 million volume, which is great. But I was telling Bill, again, this is where it gets cool. And part of that is Max, honestly, I even probably over exaggerate how much I'm in it, but I'm maybe 3 hours a week in my real estate team. And we'll probably net maybe 1.6 million in 2021, which is sweet. So we'll just put that.
How many agents do you have on your team?
I was gonna hurry and just do my little chart. Is there a eraser somewhere, Robert?
Yeah, about that. Probably not.
So I'm big on like divisions. I was just gonna lay this out, just kind of what my org chart looks like right now. And then we'll kind of talk about the main phases that I recommend hiring and adding talent to your team. And then we'll jump into the process.
This may or may not work, and this probably won't work, but I'll get something else.
Yeah. Is it hard? Sure. Okay. So we have our operations division. On our real estate team. We have our sales division. these kind of report to me / my leadership team. We've got our operations division, we have our sales division, and normally we have just the lead generation division, which is kind of what the MRA2 is talking about. I kind of feel like we're dividing it more into two chunks right now, which is our marketing division. I have this rock star director of marketing, her name's Katen. She handles all of our SOI touches, right, like our 36 touch programs. But she's done a really great job of dividing it up into agent 36 touch programs. So all of our agents on our team are required to have minimum their top 200 database people that we require them to kind of stay in touch with. But for the most part, we handle the majority of the touches, the events, the emails, text messages, all that sort of stuff. So she runs agent SOI, but what she's also done is she's became our team database. So we have like 1,000 people that are just strictly loyal to the organization. So when they want to go, you know, buy or sell, we can just temporarily assign them to an agent, come back. So she actually kind of helps nurture those SOI. And a lot of times when you're building a team, your SOI eventually will start migrating to becoming your team database. And then she just handles all of our other lead gen systems. I think we generated somewhere around like 9,000 leads in 2021 from all different sources that are not people that we know. But then the other one is our lead generation division. So right now it's just her. She'll probably have an assistant that's going to be one of our missing people. She'll probably hire her leverage out this year. But our lead generation division is our ISA division. So that's really what we spent 2021 focusing on. And I'll tell you, out of all the different phases of my team, the dang ISA division has been my pain point, but we're officially kind of rocking in that. We've had one that was just incredible, and we've got 3 ISAs right now. That 2 of them, and once the other now comes out of training, hopefully we've got good stuff going for her. But they're hitting standard right now. So 2 appointments set per ISA per day is what our standard is. And we have a lead coordinator. A lead coordinator that basically is just the person that is just making sure those ISAs stay as efficient as possible. And then right now we have 15 sales agents. We have probably 2 to 3 of them that did around 60 deals-ish, 60 or more this last year. We probably got another like 4 of them or something that did 24 to 30, and then we probably got another, 8 of them that were 12 to 18, something like that. So part of that is, we've got a bunch of agents that are on our team that just are totally happy just to go crank out a deal a month, and that's fine with us. About 10 is our minimum standard. Like if someone does less than our organization, it probably costs us money for all the value we provide them. So we say minimum standard is probably 12 for us, but even around the 18 is fine, especially a couple of them do higher price point, which is great. They want to specialize in luxury or a little bit of commercial. A lot of times these are just really getting the momentum, just some of our steady eddies, but a lot of these 2 or 3 people that are doing a ton of deals, that's where we're starting to figure out how to allow them to build a team within the team kind of concept. So once someone's on pace, basically closing 4 deals a month in our organization, we'll hire them some leverage. And so part of that hiring process is really a pain. So that's what we take on the burden of, is either that they want to be a showing assistant, a personal admin, someone's going to call a database for them, someone could be a buyer's agent. A lot of times that first hire can be incredibly flexible for them. And ideally that we've got 2 of them that we've actually hired their people for them. And every one of their goals is to double their transactions. And again, any of you that are solo agents right now, normally Matt's coaching coaches you when you're on pace to do 3-4 deals a month, you're somewhere around that 40 transaction level. That's when you should be hiring your first full-time person. And again, you go out with the intention or the mindset that my first hire is going to just be an assistant, someone that can just help with stuff. They're probably just going to be an assistant and help with stuff. And that's the mistake I made probably 7 times. You've got to raise your level of thinking of what the talent level of that role is. And it wasn't until I screwed it up enough that I'm like, we're not hiring anybody else. And we went a whole year without hiring someone because I was so sick of people coming in and out of our organization that's when that next year I'm like, I'm not hiring someone unless it's a director of operations. Like I'm going to hire like a rock star in that administrative role. And once I found that next year, we doubled the business. We went from 60 to 123 units with one hire. And that's part of it is when you talk about operations or administrative division, you've got to raise your standards of what you want. I heard the word assistant, part-time assistant, shared person, or whatever. That's all great, but to me, that's just a stepping stone or even potentially a Band-Aid for you going out and doubling your business. And if you're looking just to go from 50 units to 50 units with a little bit more of your time back, that's okay too. But even that director of operations for us, we doubled the production and we worked probably 60% less that next year because they just took on everything. So that's our agents. We've got a couple of them help on our new construction side. We get a couple builders and stuff like that we represent. But our operations, we have our director, who actually is that first guy that we hired. He took a pay cut to come to us. His name's Cameron Wilson. Some of you might have met him. He actually teaches some admin classes in the state, just if you want to send some of your admin people there. But director of operations, and again, he was our first person, but now he's running our entire hub. So he manages all of our hub, all of our employees, which is the vision we had, he bought into, that he was willing to take a step backward to kind of take a leap forward with us. We have 2 TCs. One primarily just does our new construction, which was probably 80 of our units last year, because it's just weird listing management and transaction coordination for all of our builders. And then the other one does everything else. So a lot of times too is when I say, I get people to say have assistants that come to me like, oh, I got to hire my second assistant. Like my assistant's just drowning. I'm like, well, how many files does he have? Well, he's got 7 on his plate right now. And I'm like, 7? I'm like, right now my TC has 107 on her plate. At any time, she has 100 to 120. So we closed, probably 300 of our transactions, and she did every bit of the listing management, all the other contracts, even other contracts that canceled. So you just got to raise the bar again of what your expectations are. Okay. And then we have the ISAs, TCs, and we have one VA. It jumps around a little bit. So, cool. Any questions on that?
So with your director, if you're really looking at it, would they actually be kind of right under you and then they also manage the marketing, the lead gen and sales?
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah, technically he kind of is the leader for any of our administrative people, like our lead coordinator. He actually kind of is the leader for the marketing manager. Anybody that's a W-2 employee, I technically have under him, but there's definitely times that I jump out because I want to maybe personally coach or, get them motivated up. But we've really gone all in on MAPS coaching too. So my director of ops has a full-time coach from MAPS. My lead generation director has a full-time coach, and my marketing manager has a full-time coach. And we actually had a full-time director of sales that was coaching of our agents. We just, MAPS Coaching just launched a brand new program that you can outsource your coaching. So it ends up being way cheaper than having something in-house. So we just barely launched that program. So MAPS Coaching is directly coaching our umbrella of agents. So, cool.
So, and you pay for it?
Yep. Yeah, because my director of sales was awesome for sure. But it's just expensive. We were paying him a salary and, he had a % override on GCI and if we grew it, whatever, but he was on track to probably make $150,000 this year. And he was basically at the end of the coach him every other week. He was trying to coach him every week, but when things cancel or, whatever, we now outsource that to MAPS, which my coach actually kind of has an umbrella of specialized coaches that will coach ISA divisions, ops directors, director of sales. And so we outsource it to a gal that she's now coaching all 15 of our agents every other week until $400 a month. So again, that's a lot of expense when you look that up, but like we've phased into it for sure. So total, we're somewhere around 25-ish people on the team. So okay.
I have a question on the VA. So does your VA oversee like your database stuff, or is it mostly in the operate? And I see where you categorize them, but are they not doing anything with your database type stuff?
They do VA for a bunch of stuff. So they help pull the list for our ISAs, they actually help, import this or do this. So they run some of our ads for our, I think everybody's kind of using her as an assistant to some degree. I think part of this is we've got a lot of great leadership in our positions now that I think a lot of our future leverage this year as far as administrative will be VAs. I was at Gary's, because our team's in that Gary Keller Platinum Mastermind group, where it's like the top 200 rainmakers that go down every month or every quarter to sit with Gary and the other rainmakers like Ben Kitty and Tim Heil and Kristen Cole and stuff like that. I sat next to a gal, I forgot her name, you guys might even know her, but she's down in Scottsdale, Arizona. Her team did 850 transactions last year with 9 agents. But they have 22 admin. So they have 11 admin in-house, and then they have 11 VAs. So basically every admin has their own VA, and they average like $800, you know, per VA. And it's working very well for them. Like everything's leveraged out, you know, but again, like to start with VAs, I have a hard time thinking that because I need boots on the ground talent, but I really like what she's done. So I think we've got a lot of that. So as we expand and keep going to 1,000 transactions, hopefully every full-time admin can eventually just have their specialized VA. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So any other quick questions before we start? Okay.
Johnny,
Yep.
hey, this is Karen Anderson, and I'm sorry, you guys, I have COVID, so I'm not spreading COVID around for Christmas. I'm home and sequestered. But Johnny,
Thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand what you said. So you said that you really prefer to have like boots on the ground, somebody there, your first talent hire, and then let them work with the VA when they've earned that right. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my preference. I think the first hire, and we've learned a lot about outsourcing stuff, even you guys, you know, with Marcus and Exec Assist and stuff like that, you know, on what makes sense to have in the office versus outsourcing and stuff. So I think a lot of the first talented leader hires, personally, I want to be in the hub. And then their leverage, I think, will probably primarily a lot be those VAs. So yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
So I was just Googling last night as I was preparing for this. So I actually just found a cool website that I was Googling what are the biggest mistakes that people make, right? Because a lot of times you're not going to learn what not to do until you make the mistake and screw it up. And then that's the only way I've learned is not to not do it the second or third time, right? But I thought a lot of these were great to kind of set the stage of how the process that we go through, actually we could prevent some of these mistakes, okay? So the first one is not creating an accurate job description, right? Part of that is in the old provisioning courses, we actually had what's called a missing persons report. And part of that is if you don't have total clarity on what that role is, what the job description is, and what the areas of accountability are, when you start getting candidates and they just start showing up, you're less likely to hold to a standard of what you're wanting, right? Part of the biggest mistakes I see with our people is they'll say, oh, I want an admin. And they're not crystal clear what they want that person to go do, right? And so they get 30 applicants and the highest talent level of all those applicants is maybe 7, right? And then most people just end up hiring the best 7 that apply versus being really clear on what your 10 looks like. And when you just get a bunch of people applying that you're navigating through the hiring process, you have a very clear bar that you're holding, that you're not just going to hire the best candidate that applied, that you're not going to stop looking until you found the candidate that you're looking for. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I'll go through a couple tools for you, but Keller Williams has already done the heavy lifting on this. So they already have a job description for every major role that you're probably hiring for. So every one of these roles, like Director of Lead Gen, Director of Sales, Director of Operations, you know, ISAs, they already have a very clear job description that is a good starting point for you, but then you can just add to it. I'll show you where those tools are, but they also have kind of what the areas of accountability. What are the most important things for that role to be doing, right? So you're not having to create a lot of that. Failing to consider recruiting from within. I've hired from out, from in, and a lot of times the more prerequisite knowledge that someone has, if they're the right talented person, I think that speeds it up. Relying too much on the interview, totally, right? What is the typical agent hiring process is? How many times do you think the typical agent meets with someone they hire? One time, right? I get Robert in the room and he's so dang charismatic and I just like him. So I'm just gonna pull the trigger and I'm gonna hire him, right? And that's part of the problem is you want to hire someone like you. And a lot of the roles you're trying to fill, you're trying to hire someone not like you. Are you guys the best admin? Probably not, right? So you shouldn't be looking for someone like you. And a lot of times that's where you have to be a student of behavior, which is where this behavioral assessment comes in. You've got to understand, not everybody thinks like you, not everybody has the same opinions, not everybody works like you, blah, 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 right? Using unconscious bias, absolutely, right? Like sometimes your bias comes in, and that's why they say to stay neutral in the hiring process. Some of my people that hire, that was the one thing I just kept getting at. I'm like, shut your mouth, stop trying to connect with them and just stay neutral so you can truly, authentically observe who they are, right? If you're applying for a job at our market center, my MCing of the lead tries to hire you immediately, she just wants to make them feel comfortable. How's your family? How's it going? You know, in the hiring process, you want to just try to almost be cold to some degree. You want to just be neutral, because a lot of times in the hiring process or in the interview, they're trying to pick up cues to be who you want them to be, right? The best someone will ever be is in a job interview typically, right? And that's part of it, is you don't want to tell them who to be, so they can just show up who they are, so you can actually identify or analyze, are they the right person? But that's also why, and I'll show you the checklist, but that's also why our hiring process is long. I usually even apologize to people, like, I'm so sorry about this. This is the really probably the longest hiring process you ever go through, but I'll tell you, it's going to be the best outcome for you and me, and it's going to be worth your time navigating through it, okay? Hiring people less qualified, rejecting overqualified candidates. That sounds funny, but it's true. I've seen a lot of agents that when they have someone so talented show up, they get intimidated. And if you have a lid of a 6 or a 7, leadership wise, and a 9 or 10 show up, you're actually like subconsciously or naturally, you kind of push them away. Whereas when you want to go build businesses, you should just get totally energized by seeing someone more talented than you. You should just get pumped about it. A lot of times you like to keep your world and your box and your comfort zone so tight that when someone incredibly talented you know is going to push you, it scares you and you want to push away from that. And you can't. Waiting for the perfect candidate, rushing the hire, relying too much on references, expecting too much. All right, so let's jump into it. So here is KW Connect. Who's ever visited KW Connect? So it's going to be moving around a little bit, but because it's shrunk my screen, it doesn't have the headers on it. But if you go to kwconnect.com, Eric, you're going to have to make Rob your best friend to use some of these. But under the resources tab, I think
you click on the arrow. It'll drop down. No.
All right,
Why is it shrinking?
the projector. So under resources, you just go down to the leverage tab, and then click on the leverage tab, and that's that screen I was on. So there's one main location here on KW Connect that all their tools are. So a lot of times, most of our agents don't even know where all these are. But there's a first hire calculator. So if you actually calculate when you have your great first hire, like what your per hour productivity and income can be if you hire the right person. We'll come back to the career visioning docs. This is also where you can go to for leverage classes, where there's leverage classes all around the country. They've got a bunch Zoom personally, like to go through this because it's so technical. It's hard for me on Zoom, but I would challenge everybody if you want to go build a business. I've been to the full version 12 times. So if you want to get good at hiring, you got to treat it like school, elementary school. In first grade, the first time you go to it, second grade, and this does not count as a grade because this is like packets. When somebody went to packets, okay?
We all went to packets, don't we? That's the kind of people we are.
Today we're going to fully navigate through the KPA, okay? And the Keller Personality Assessment, if you don't know the history, we had an exclusive contract with a company called Corporate Consulting. A lot of who the company is now is thankful to that company that Gary Keller got in the business with. It's a guy named Dane Henyon who created this incredibly powerful tool that a lot of the Fortune 500 companies were using for a long, long time. We paid about $7 to $8 million per year to have exclusive real estate industry access to this. And they had a partnership for about 15 years. So that's why we got a class called Recruit Select before career visioning. And it was also a tool called ABA. So not only do we pay that, but every time you went and ordered one of these very sophisticated behavioral assessments, it's $200. So I spent a lot of money ordering assessments back in the day under the old rule, but eventually we just got so good at this in our department on the KPA, and our leverage department got so big that they eventually just invested the money and created their own behavioral assessment and department and class. So that's why it's now called provisioning, and it's called the KPA, the Keller Personality Assessment. So it's a lot of the same technology and sophistication on the behavioral assessment, but it's really geared towards us and Keller Williams and our job roles in the real estate industry and stuff like that. So the KPA, if you haven't done this, even on you, minimum, talk to Robert and you need to order yours and just go through it. And Robert probably even be happy to go through it for you, because part of it is you get this big report, but then the real process is going through this report with everybody, okay? Here they have org charts. So they have org charts. So they'll show you the different org charts that are in the MREA, and it breaks them down a little bit more. So if you want to say, all right, what is my first hire? What is my second hire? What is my third hire? What is my fourth hire? The job profile. So I just explained what those are. So if you're missing a position, director of operations or whatever, go find the job profile, and you can download a document specifically just for that role that you could then have exactly what you're looking for. Once you actually onboard someone, which is the next phase, which is a whole other class, that's actually how to just super train them the first 90 days. Like, how do you just do everything you can to set them up for success, train them, help them hit certain benchmarks that after 90 days, they're just running a marathon, right? And then some other random ongoing employee things, okay? So under the career visioning documents, which we're going to navigate in a second, I'll show you, each step by step, you can come in and download these documents. So track record questions, expectations conversations, reference checklist, thought process questions, yada, yada, okay? And I'll show you all those in a second. And then the next one is a KPA. So the team leader and the MCA are the only people that actually have access to this. Once command fully gets built out, I think they're going to actually allow agents just to quickly order it whenever they want. But right now, you just need to send an email to the MCA or team leader saying, hey, here's the name, here's the email, here's what job they're applying for. I want you to send them a behavioral assessment. They take it, and then they can send you the actual report. So let me, right when this rolled out was 2016, I took our first KPA for our office. I was dating a girl named Megan Rojas at the time, so I had her take it. So every time my wife holds this up, she's so mad that her name keeps popping at the top, but it's chronological in Windows order. I got so obsessed with behavioral assessments that I'm like, even when I'm dating someone, I'm like, they're taking a behavioral assessment. So when you log into this, there's two things that happen. There's three things that you can access. And once you've been to the course, this is something that you don't want to share with people, because you're the consultant now and they're the person navigating through the interviews, okay? So part of that is the person navigating through the interviews, you don't want them to think or know that there's a right or wrong, right? So part of that, behavior is just behavior, okay? And a lot of times if you think that they're scoring against something, it creates fear, it creates anxiety or whatever. But on our side, the consultant side, because thousands and thousands and thousands of these reports have been taken, they've actually determined what is the perfect behavioral profile for a specific role, and they match that candidate up against that role. So you can see here, I am 100% behavioral match for an operating partner. So out of 0 to 100, my top one is an OP. Productivity coach, I'm a high. Team leader, I'm a high. Mega agent, I'm a high. You get down here to like the bottom ones. Call coordinator, I'm a low match. Showing assistant, listing assistant, accountant, market center administrator, transaction, anything that's high detail, where I'm having to take an instruction from someone, I'm probably not a good match for that, right? And that's part of it, is you just want to see, but again, this isn't a deal kill. Like, you want to just know what's their natural behavior compared to the role, and we'll kind of navigate through that.
Do you want to share your screen again?
Okay. The next thing is there's two reports that you can download. So this is what they call the job fit, or the job matches, okay? And it'll print out a little fancy PDF. job matches. So Jonny job matches, here's just a PDF that the team leader or MCA can send you. So it just lines them all up and it has all the roles. So it even got some of the KWRI ones. So it's agent, a single agent, product manager, inbound sales, regional director. I'm only an 87% match. We're going to figure out why that is. Okay?
And the IPAs I've ever seen are ones that are triggered to, like, if I have an assistant coming on, it will tell them that they're a good fit for assistant. It doesn't give them all the other.
Yeah, so this is a job match. So this will match it up against all the
You
roles.
have it, it does produce it.
It does.
You just have to go get it. So right here, when I click on this view report, so say I was actually applying for the legal assistant at KWRI, naturally it will just match it up against the job I put in there immediately. So when I click the download report, it'll only match it up against the one I applied for. But in the system, you have to just go manually in and click the view report, and it will show you the report matching it up against every other role that you want to hire for. Because there is times that I'm like, oh, I want this person, like someone that actually applied for my my administrative assistant when I was a team leader. Like I had an administrative assistant job ad out there. This person applied for it and they came in as like a 20% match, and all their high ones clearly told me immediately behaviorally that they were a great salesperson. So I just changed the transition the conversation. I'd be like, to be honest with you, I don't think this is the right role for you, but let me talk about another role. And I actually ended up just hiring them as a buyer's agent to my team. And that person has been a buyer's agent on my team for 7 years. Fantastic buyer's agent. But there's two reports. There's personal report and job fit report, okay? You need to understand the two of these because job fit report is only for you. You are the consultant. Job fit report is only for you. Repeat after me. Job fit report is only for me. Personal report for you. Okay? Personal report is for the candidate, okay?
Personal report is for the candidate.
Personal report is for the candidate. So I'll turn to show you what the two differences are, okay? So the personal report, after they take this big assessment, they want to know, how did I score, right? And again, there's no right or wrong, but this is the report that you can actually just send them either before or after your job interview, whatever. This is what they can actually take and just go through and just learn about themselves. But again, there's no right or wrong. It just says, all right, I'm, mostly assertive, I'm mostly social, I'm very independent, I'm pretty flexible, I'm more on the intense side. It's just, it's teaching me about me, assertiveness, aggressive, people-oriented, expressive. It's just, whereas the job fit report, which we're going to spend most of the time navigating through here, it actually shows me, okay, Jonny is an overall fit, but it would show me my low, medium, or high match. It would show what is my actual ranking, and the gray bar is where you want it to fall to be in the line of the ideal behavior for that role. Okay, so if the job was like an MCA, you don't need them to be as assertive, so it would be way down here, and you would see where there's discrepancy from their true behavior from what the ideal behavior is. Okay, so we're gonna come back to that. So all the tools are right there on the page, but we're going to focus a lot on this, okay? So this is the career visioning candidate checklist. And of all the things that I show you, this is one of the most important ones, okay? This basically just navigates you through the process of when you're hiring. So who's hiring someone this year? Raise your hand. Basically everybody, okay? So when you actually decide what role it is that you want to hire for, you actually go out and start recruiting people to be candidates. It's like a funnel, right? You might throw job ads out. You might start calling your preferred vendors, your mortgage people, your title people saying that you're hiring. You might throw something on Facebook or whatever. And you just get this big funnel that you want to recruit as many candidates as you can through. Once someone actually identifies or you talk someone into being a candidate, this is the process that we're going to go through, okay? So I'm going to pause this for a second, and I just want to give you just some personal advice on how I've actually structured the phases of how I've hired my team, okay? If you look at the org chart, right, it looks big and complicated, but there's kind of really just 3 phases that I did. Great.
If you dip it in your monster, it'll probably rub it out.
Okay. So the first phase is admin / operations. Admin operations. Second phase of my organization, and this is very long. This is not just you're going to do this in a month, right? The second phase is sales, okay? And then the third phase is leadership. These are year goals or multiple year goals for you. The first priority for you and building a team, right? Getting out of the solo world, your first priority has got to be figuring out the administrative operation systems. When the majority of our agents in our system say they want to go hire someone, what typically is the first hire they want to make?
Hiring.
Why is that?
They want to stop taking buyers around.
They want to stop showing houses. So why does the MRA org model recommend that is not what you do? The first hire you should make is administrative and operation wise. What are the risks of going sales and why do they tell you to do administrative operations?
So leverage starts with system, tools, and then people. And when you think about your process as an agent, the system and the tools that you have to run that system are the 80%. It's not the sales, right? So you should be outsourcing the 80%, not the 20% first. And whether that's through a system technology wise or through a person that executes that same system. If you go to the sales side, you're outsourcing your 20% instead of your 80%, and then you become two people's 80%.
Yeah. What are you gonna say?
Well, and you don't, when you're a single agent, you have a system, you just don't know that.
Yeah.
And then an admin coming in helps you put them on paper, so you can duplicate them.
What else? You laughed when I said that.
Anything. No, I think that if you don't have an assistant in place, the minute that the buyer agent starts to have production, you won't be able to handle the business that's coming in. Not only that, the demand for the training that's gonna require, that if there's gonna be required of you, you're not gonna be able to meet those demands either. So two things are gonna happen. One, your personal production is going to go down. And then second, just what you've now turned into really just a coach instead of a real estate agent running a business. You're now just coaching. And it's taxing. It's super taxing.
Yeah. Any other reasons?
It sounds like building the business backwards, because then you're always like creating a mess where you think you're creating production, you're creating a mess.
Yeah.
And then trying to go back and figure it out. And it's like, just start that way and work down with the system training and then add the production.
Yeah, I think in general, like, you know, you gotta get busy before it makes sense to hire someone, right? Like, part of it is you gotta lead with revenue, you gotta have some funds to go out and hire someone. And that's why they even try to set a benchmark of 30, 45 deals-ish, something like that. Maybe it could be different if you're luxury or something like that.
Well, question, so like on that first hire too, part-time just isn't even an option. Like to have an assistant come in and just be part-time, like I've noticed I need that full-time, like part-time is, you almost need it even full-time and then some. You try to really scale that back, but a part-time assistant really is only there for a certain part of the day. And then you end up bending to what their schedule is because you're trying to be accommodating. And that just doesn't work. Like,
yeah, we tried everything. We tried part-time assistants, we tried shared assistants, we tried outsourcing things, we tried VAs, we tried sharing, you know, TCs in the office or with other agents. Like all of them can help a little, but again, that is not the first step in a business. The first step is you might be using those in different phases to get even up to 30, 45 deals. But hiring your first full-time director of operations, someone that just wakes up, eats, drinks, and sleeps you and your business, all your systems, goes to bed thinking about them, you know, someone that is just 100% committed on the administrative side, which their 20% is your 80%, that is what really will just explode your business. And that's part of it is when you hire a seven as that person, your production doesn't go up, you end up getting pulled back into things, you know, they don't take full ownership, you're trying to train them, you know, a lot of times you're not the best trainer for that person. Like if they can't just take full ownership and all the 80% tasks, you probably have a not right hire.
We got one online too.
I was just gonna ask, what is that director of operations gonna cost you? I mean, somebody really good, what are they gonna do for very hour?
Yeah, so there's potential talent, there's emerging talent. Potential talent is you just think maybe they could be something one day, right? Emerging talent is someone that they've at least had some track record of success. And then there's proven talent, right? Emerging talent's the medium most expensive, and then proven talent just has just a career of proven that their talent is the most expensive. So it just depends on what risk that you want to take in your business and what your budget is. We were right at potential emerging. Cameron was right in there. He was young, he had a degree. He actually had gone out and sold for, you know, Vivid for a year or two and made some money, but realized he does not like the sell side of things. He thought he might want to go be a computer programmer, whatever, but we threw it out, we found them, found business with them, so we were able to kind of snatch him up pretty cheap. So part of that is, they don't really necessarily buy into the compensation that's right now. They just want a rocket ship that's gonna take them where they're going. So
Sarah, online?
Sarah,
Hi.
your version?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, don't hate me. I'm in Costa Rica. Sorry. No, not Costa Rica. Puerto Rico. Sorry.
Those are different.
Right. That I was just thinking about, and I feel like I've learned this year, is one, someone just said, like, as a single agent, like, you have a system, you just don't know it. And I think that actually sitting down and writing out the things that you do on a daily basis and the tasks that you're doing, I think so often we just automatically are doing things and we're not realizing that it's like a repetitive process that someone else could be leveraging our time by doing. And then sorry, can you still hear me?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, the other thing that I think I've learned too is that as your business is growing, I think it's really difficult to want to take that leap to the next hire. And so oftentimes you're hesitant and you're bogged down in all the things that you're trying to do. So you're not able to like get over that hump. And I think that if you realize that you can leverage other aspects of your life too. And so like, you might not be ready to hire a full-time assistant that like lives, eats and breathes your business, but you might be able to hire someone to help you with your laundry or to help picking up your kids or doing something else that will allow you to have the leverage that you need to take your business to the next level.
Yeah, I think, there's all different types of leverage for sure. Like, but again, even when we chose to hire the director of operations, and we felt like we had hired someone that had incredibly great potential talent, and he already had at least a little bit of a track record. We were actually pretty unorganized, to be honest. We had actually turned off our emails for like 2 years that were going out their database because we wanted to write our own, or we wanted to make it more personal. So we felt like the Keller Williams automated ones were just like too, stock or whatever. We didn't send out an email for 2 years because we were just so busy, right? Even we kept wanting to go back through our under contract checklist and make it better and stuff like that. We actually didn't even have a CRM at that point. And so part of that is you might have some systems, but again, you hire a talented person, they should get you organized. And so part of that, when I hired Cameron, we actually hired him the first day. I gave him like 3 things that we wanted him to like look into and then start working on. And the next morning we flew out to family reunion. We were gone for the whole first week that we had hired him. We came back and he had spent, 15 hours researching what's the best CRM in the real estate industry. And he actually got us organized, totally set up. He'd actually gone around the office, talked to like 5 other admin and got trained up on what an under contract checklist is, a listing manager checklist. Like, it was just crazy how much, he just kind of ran out the gates with us. And part of that is because he was so cool, I would have felt dumb saying, hey, will you go get me a coffee or will you go wash my car? I definitely had administrative assistants that I felt like that might be more in the job description, but we actually just really treated him like a director of operations from the beginning, So part of that is, back to this concept, the biggest mistakes you make is when you bring, most likely the agents that are busy, that are doing 20, 30, 40 deals, when I actually sit down with them and they have no leverage or support in their system, I ask them, like, what's your 36 touch look like? And they're probably doing a fraction of the 36 touch. I'm like, show me your under contract checklist. They're like, I use a TC or I don't even know what that is. I'm like, all right, what's your 2022 year economic model or budget model or, any sort of plan? Like, they are just so in a tornado of their business that they just don't have any of that stuff set up, right? So part of that is when you naturally think that bringing another salesperson into that world without administrative support, you're now compounding that. Now you're taking your high producing time away to help show them some things, right? So overall, your income's probably going to go down. You're trying to share some deals, you're trying to get them going. But then again, after a year of you getting them rocking and rolling, they now have their own foundation. You don't have the underlying foundation of administrative systems. So boom, turnover starts to happen. And if you don't have the foundation of an operations division, your likelihood of retaining great agents, even if you started them new, totally train them up, it is not what you've done for me, it's what have you done for me today, right? With our real estate industry. And that's part of it, is you immediately start running a wheelhouse of people coming in and out of your organization. Even big teams, when I look at their ops division and it's a mediocre one, I know that they just have terrible turnover, and they put so much time and energy into re-recruiting because they can't keep their people, right?
So back to your question on like, how much does that cost? We found our very first hire at the college, and we picked her up young, and she didn't know much about the real estate business at all. So like you said, hiring kind of cheap just because she didn't have the skills yet, but grew into like an incredible assistant, which was great. But we started her at like $15 an hour, and then moved her into about $20 an hour with bonuses. So, so every, like once a year, we bonus her 5,000 or whatever, just to help out, or, you know, to help compensate some of that. Because she brought so much value to the business. And then now I'm looking to replace and rehire, something like that. But the problem is for me now is that she worked at such a high level for me that now I'm not looking to hire at that lower level. I have to make that really, really great administrative hire, because I don't want to go through that one more time.
So, yeah, when we hired Cameron, because granted, he just finished his 7th year, but our first year, we were a $2,500 salary for a long time. Probably like the first 3 years until we started bumping the salary up. He's only at like $5,000 a month salary right now, but I'm always a big advocate of lower basis, high potential. So that first year, we said $2,500 base and $100 per closed transaction out of transactions, but you have to get licensed, Cameron. So even that, he got his license in 17 days. He just found out because he was motivated to get that transaction fee, right? And so part of that, even this last year though, in his 7th year, I bet, because it's not all just our team, we've got a couple little things that we've helped create opportunities for him, but I bet even just the director of operations role, he's made $210,000 in our organization this 2021 year. But again, he's still at a $5,000 salary. Everything else, we figured out how to create stuff. And again, that's part of why we even charge a transaction fee. We charge a transaction fee on every file, which we instituted 3-4 years into him. That actually is mostly his bonus. So he makes a lot of money. He's motivated to help just build a great. But then even the TC that we have now, the 2 TCs, he's hired them, he's trained them, he holds them accountable. Like, I don't even know what they do with it, but they just do it, right?
Can I ask a question on your TC that does like all of your files, those 100 and whatever files? What is that, like 40 hours a week? Is it just all the time? Yeah, it's full time. So his name's Trevor. So part of it is because we really strategically try to go pick up some builders. So some build, we have about 5 builders we represent right now. One of them is Bach Homes. We got a couple projects for them. We got 2 other builders that are kind of more production, you know, smaller subdivisions, whatever. And then 2 of them are custom luxury builders. So we've got to get a little bit more active into finding the lots for them. And then actually just going from start to finish, helping, you know, the buyers navigate the custom home process, and kind of end up going back and forth on who's the bad guy, I guess. But we close probably the custom builders and then the production builders. Like, those are weekly meetings, so that person's in on all those weekly meetings, because it's not just listing management under contract. It just ends up being a ton of other random stuff when you're dealing with builders. It's also there at every buyer appointment with those builders, just to make sure that we're not dropping the ball on anything. He handles all the listing management, so all the marketing management, you know, cooperates a little bit with our marketing manager on building websites and stuff for builders. Helps even on budgets, but now that we've actually sold a ton of our new construction, we're like, oh, we gotta get some more. So we've actually started moving him into a little bit more of a land database manager to help kind of create a better pipeline of, you know, either lots or raw land that we could go serve up to our builders. So does he also do all of your transaction coordinating for your sales team? No, that's the other TC. So all the other 300 transactions is one TC is Heather. But part of that, Cameron just built out such an incredibly sufficient, you know, not sufficient, but just a very efficient. Yeah. There's like 120, 130 items in our under contract checklist. So as soon as our agent launches a new file email, that TC just is very, you know, she just loves just checking the box, right? And then she handles all of our listing management too for all the other deals. Okay. It was just kind of too crazy to put the new construction stuff in her such systematized. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Do you have that mixed, or what that looks like?
Yeah. So, and again, my partner is just basically a sales agent right now, but we had to really figure this out. And it started with one person And we eventually hired a marketing person, that was our second full-time hire that just, because he did all of the administrative stuff out of the gates and then did all of our marketing stuff. So he actually got us to a complete, consistent 36 touch program. He helped us with our event management. He'd even print the lists off and say, Johnny, call these people, Clay, call these people, whatever. So he got us organized on the marketing lead gen and the admin side. But eventually, when we went from 60 to 120 transactions, it started being a lot. So that's when we hired pretty fast that second full-time, more marketing specialized person to help with websites, 36 touch, that type of thing. And those two full-time people, Clay was still working 40, 50 hours a week because we had such great leverage that they were helping. And yes, they went out and put a lockbox on and showed a house if we need to every once in a while. But for the most part, Clay and two admin, because I'd stepped in the team leader role, did all 120 of those deals. Because I just drove everything I had through them and just held them accountable to it. And then we started adding salespeople. So that next year we added 3 salespeople, and even the onboarding process of our admin, like the admin handled a lot of that, trained them on our systems, got their 36 touch, downloaded the database, and it really just helped us have, weekly or maybe once or twice a week, accountability meetings or coaching skill building meetings with the agents. And then we probably went up to 7 agents before we start needing some more administrative people, and then really what the last 3 years for me is, how do I get out of the leadership of all these people? So that's where I start focusing more on the directors of sales, director of lead gen, adding some coaching or, how do I actually get people that when problems do pop up, it just doesn't escalate to me, that they can actually help solve more of that. Cool.
Yeah, I have like a million more questions about that, but I'm assuming you guys will be covering that in like the red sign team, like end of January, you guys do that.
Yeah.
Course, so that's probably where a lot of this will get broken down, is that right?
Yep. They'll look through every one of their systems.
Okay, so I'll wait for that, but yeah.
Yeah, we're doing a red sign team tells all thing in Orem January 27th, right? From 9 to 4 p.m. So we're going to go through literally every single division. Because to be honest, I didn't even know what a lot of the systems they are in or what they're using. So we're just doing a full day class that you can sign up for. That is basically us tell all. We just block all of our systems. And you can actually see the behavioral profiles. You can kind of see the, who's saying what, which is nice. All right, so let's jump into the process. Now we kind of talked a little bit more about raising the bar and what you want. How do you go get them? So this is the screening checklist. This is who's seen this before? Raise your hand. So this is the screening checklist. This is the checklist that navigates you through the hiring process, okay? And we're gonna go step by step because this is really where I feel like there's so much in career visioning, but at the end of the day, if you're just navigating through the checklist and using the job fit guide of the KPA, it will help you so easily follow the process. And if you even don't know everything and you're just still following the process, you drastically increase your chances of bringing great people to the organization, okay? And we can talk about best practices or mistakes that I've made or whatever as we've gone through these, but I might role play a little bit with just Robert as we're going through my KPA, just to kind of show you how we talk about it. So the first one is you got all these candidates, right? And you just now you've got the top of the funnel. And again, the first stage is filter stage. So there's 4 big chunks. There's the screening process. So there's people that come in that you might not devote very much time to, and you already know that they're not a great candidate, right? Like if I had my giant funnel, right, and Robert applied for something, I could just immediately just push him away. I'm like, I'm not gonna spend time. Just kidding. And then there's establishing trackers, but then there's the interview, which is a lot of just one-on-one time, okay? One-on-one time that you're just fundamentally just digging into their soul, because you want to know at the end of the day everything you possibly can about them to make the best educated decision about whether they're the right fit. And that a lot of times can take 4, 5 hours, 6 hours of time together. And even for me, right, out the gates, you might be able to make a little bit more mistakes, right? But if for some reason something ever happened in one of my leadership roles on my team, like if I lost a director of ops or something like that, the bar is so high, we built in a bigger budget that we can probably go higher up that proven talent scale, but I would not cheat the process, right? Because even team leaders for me in my market center, leadership positions, like the higher level your businesses go, you better get it right, right? And that's part of it is make your mistakes now when you're smaller, go hire a bunch of people. It doesn't work out, great. Just like the faster you kind of go through some of that, might be the better. The next one is, so once you go through interview, the next big phase that we'll talk about is perspective. This is where now you've actually spent all the time and you might have a pretty good idea who they are, but now you're wanting some external perspective on who this person is. References, group interviews, that type of thing. And once they pass all three of these phases, that's when you move into the commitment phase, which is actually you making a job offer to them and going through the expectations interview, which I'll talk about as well. So number one, so we're talking about screening. So, you know, if you're navigating in things and you just have say you have your director of operations that you're hired for. Who's hired for director of operations this next year? Okay, 3 or 4 of you, okay? So part of that is, you know, you want to try to go probably recruit 30, 40 candidates to go out and start screening through them. And again, once you make the decision that someone is not a good fit for that position or a good fit for your organization, stop the process with them. You are not obligated to continue down this and waste your own time and waste their time, okay? So each phase, there's stopping points, and if you feel like you want to continue through, great, continue. If you feel like you're stopped, they'll even show you some scripts on how you actually press the eject button and get them out of the process, okay? But again, the screening process is just filtering the candidates, right? So you might randomly get like such a crappy resume that you already know that you're not going to spend your time talking to them. The next one is just establishing a track record. So normally this is a meeting for me. So say Robert applies for my director of operations role. I always require a resume when someone's applying. I also require them to take the KPA. And then I actually go through the track record questions with them. There's 3 tools that I'll show you in a sec. But normally I want that first meeting to try to be as productive as possible, okay? So say he's applying for a job, I looked at his resume, I talked to him for 5 minutes, I want to bring him in and basically screen him as a candidate. And sometimes this could be an hour, sometimes it could be 20, 30 minutes. And part of that is you're just wanting to quickly go through their resume, and if you can get them to take the full KPA before, that's great, but a lot of times it's going to take a quick little initial meeting to move them to the next step to take the KPA. Like if you know within 20 minutes you don't want to go any farther, don't waste their time on taking the KPA with them. So a lot of times, I'd probably say 90% of the time, I have a quick meeting with them. It may be on the phone or it's in person, and then I'll teach them about the KPA and why I want them to take it, and then move to the KPA step, okay? But what are you looking for on a resume? What's a resume review for you?
First of all, do they have one? Let's just start there. Like, how many times do people come to you and they apply for a job and they don't even have a resume?
Yep.
It blows my mind.
Yep.
It's just, especially like the younger generation, it's just different. It's like, I just showed up, it's like I am.
Yep.
Ready to hire me? No. No, we're not.
Yeah, part of it, you look at, all right, what's their education level? You know, A, can they even put a resume together, right? And part of it is if they can't even put a resume together, you know, are they that committed to applying for the job anyways, right?
What kind of work experience have they had?
Work experience is good, right? Is it applicable work experience? What's the time on the jobs, you know? Like if every 16 days they've got a new job, that might be a concern, right?
And then locations, like, just how often they've moved. Just where they're coming from, just how transit are they?
Yeah.
That's why I think people always ask for the last 3 addresses of where you lived and how many years you actually lived there,
Yeah.
especially here.
Well, and even if you're hired for the sell side of things and they don't, if they're not from here, they don't have a database versus they do have a database, it's going to be totally different in your systems, right?
Looking for gaps in employment.
Gaps, yeah, you're trying to look for most likely the things that are on the resume
Right.
too, right? And this is where a quick resume review, these are just some quick questions. So if I had Robert's resume in front of me, he came to meet with me for 30, 45 minutes. These are just some questions. You know, I'm looking over your work experience the last 10 years, Robert. Looks like you've had, you know, 4 or 5 positions the last 10 years. What did you like the best? You know, why did you like that? You know, what did you like the least? You know, and I'll send all these so Robert can send them to everybody in the group after. So you have all these tools just in case you can't find them. Who did you report to? What did you like most about your supervisor at this place? What did you like least about the supervisor? The way they communicate about people, you learn a lot, right? And part of they might have had just a bad manager or supervisor, but a lot of times too, this is where I tell if someone's a victim or versus accountable, right? Why did they leave? You know, like how they communicate, are they professional or not? You know, and then just kind of keep going through those questions for each position, okay? So that really just helps me. Sometimes I just do that in my head now, but if you actually want to write stuff down, that's great. Gary Keller, he actually goes through this and he writes every single step, primarily because he wants to have notes, but also because he talks too damn much. So the only way that he's taught himself to shut up is he has to be writing to allow them to talk. And that way you're just taking notes, but it's actually just even creating some awkward silence every once in a while just to see how they show up on it, okay? What?
Not talking.
No. Not talking and not connecting is very difficult for me.
I think for most salespeople, I think for agents in general, like when they get into, interviewing, they have a natural, I need to connect and build rapport. It's kind of
That's all
something.
we're trained to do, like.
Yep, and part of it too is, like, I would finish people's sentences, I would try to emotionally connect with them, I found myself mirroring and matching them quickly in interviews. I also tried to like immediately empathize with them, right? Like, oh, I did that, oh, that's happened to me before, all that type of stuff. Like, you've got to learn to eliminate all that. Even if you have to like record yourself, right? And watch you interview someone to see that come up, or even just have, normally I don't like having other people while I'm navigating through the process, but even if you have to have someone just be a fly on the wall, observing you to like be able to like, you did this, you did this, you did this, right? Here's a quick track record interview. Thanks, sir. And even the scripts they give you is just awesome in this, but resume review worksheet, probe where necessary. What do you mean by that? Could you tell me a little bit more about that? How would that work? So every time they give you something, you should always ask 1 to 2 more probing questions as you navigate through the whole interview process, okay? So let's just, now that we've kind of gone through that process of resume review, asking some just quick track record questions, I always explain the KPA. Okay, one of the things I would like to move forward, I'd like to move forward as you as a candidate for the position. Thank you for coming in. But one of the mandatory steps that I do in my organization is we order what's called a personality assessment. You've probably taken some before. You've probably heard of the DISC assessment or the color test or something like that. This is one that's actually created and ran by our company that's exclusive to the real estate industry. So if you're wanting to be in the real estate industry, this is a really powerful tool. I would like you to take it, and then once you take it, I would like to bring you back in and let's start navigating through it. There's a lot of meat and potatoes in this assessment, and it's really cool. I've learned a lot about myself, but I also learned a lot about the other person as you navigate through this. I'll tell you, I'm going to order it as soon as you walk out the door, and I want you to take it, when you have 30, 40 minutes of totally uninterrupted time. There are pieces of this assessment that are actually timed, so you don't want your kids jumping on you, or you happen to go cook dinner in the middle of it or whatever. You want to make sure you're totally uninterrupted. And then number 2, as soon as you get those results, it'll trigger a notification to me, and then I'll call or text you, and we'll set up the next time, okay? And also, a lot of times, like how long it takes them to take the assessment sometimes tells me how motivated they are for the position. I've had people take it like an hour after they walk out the door. I've had people that I have to prod for weeks to get to take it. Okay.
I was gonna say, do you ever like set an expectation of like within the next 7 days take this, or
Yeah.
leave it open to see what their personality does?
Sometimes depends how urgent I am, but the more open-ended I like to leave because I want to observe them. So the less direction I give people throughout the whole process, probably the better. But sometimes I'll give it if I'm like really desperate to hire someone in that role.
Question on that, on the PPA, I'm just curious if you've given out so many, what is your perspective on change? So I always hear people say when they read their profile or whatever, they're like, oh, that's not me. Oh, that's not me. When charity is you. I mean, it's you, like others.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to know, like, because for sure, I'm not the same person I was when I started 15 years ago as I am today. The way I do things, the way I think is different. How often would you say somebody should retake or take a KPA? In our position.
Yeah, so the research shows that like the DISC assessment is in like the 70%-ish accuracy rating, right? There's some other ones that are kind of the middle ground, maybe 80s, but the research shows that this type of assessment, because there's, I guess, themes on kind of how sophisticated they are, but this is in the middle 90% accuracy, like the research shows that, right? And part of the other thing they say is usually by your middle 20s, your behavior is pretty pronounced. So part of that is, that's really why you go through and verify or edit this process, because you want to see why they think that it could be accurate or inaccurate. There's a lot of times when I navigate people through that they either validate and they say it's a 9 or a 10, and we'll go through how you do that. Or they go through it and they think that they're not something, and then 2 pages later, it says the same thing described in the same way, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm just like that, you know? So sometimes it's words that could trigger them, sometimes it's the way that it's phrased or whatever. Sometimes when people are going through traumatic scenarios, you know, divorces, you know, deaths or whatever, sometimes it can actually even indicate where, you know, trauma could be shown up. I'm not saying that they know what it is, but it could be shown up that might trigger some bad results. There are sometimes that, you know, it'll come out and it'll just be like low, 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 low on all the job matches. I'm like, I think it came back inaccurate. I'll encourage you to take it. There's probably been 10 scenarios where that happened. I just had to retake it. But I'll tell you, probably 95% of people that I've had retake it over the last 7 years, almost every single one of them comes back almost identical results. Yep.
So because this is like real estate related and focused, if you're tipped like an agent, like just brand new license, no experience in real estate at all, and take this versus like, say that same person takes it 10 years later after all the real estate experience, like myself, those two tests would come back pretty close to the same.
Because it's behavior, it's not even skill set or experience. Like there's very little about like that would demonstrate someone's experience in some sort of industry. Like this is truly natural behavior. And we'll go through it and you'll see very little about you talking about real estate.
This is your nature, not
Yep.
your nurture.
Yep. And part of it, like the disc assessment for me, because all you're doing is just rank the words and all that. Like if you have me take it 4 different times, I can make myself a D, I can make myself an I can make myself an S, but it's just totally not like that. Who's taking this again? Yeah, even some like facial visualization and stuff like that, like it's, yeah. Oh, you haven't taken this? No.
I want that.
So, have you, with the KPA,
Mhm.
have you seen people that have lied through the test?
No way.
It just, you can't.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if you've seen that where it's like, well, it's showing you're a dynamic this,
Mhm.
and then and they really look good, so you hire them, and then all of a sudden you're going, you have no leadership skills whatsoever.
It's like asking you your
They're just the
perspective on
behavior
a
aspect.
shape, like
Yeah.
what shape it is.
There's been times, and John, maybe you can validate this for me, because I haven't done as many as you have, but there's times where I'll get some back where they're a low job fit for everything. And I'll ask them and they got distracted in the middle of it, or I'll look at their times and you can tell that it wasn't really completed at one sitting or it was rushed through. Do you think that's, because then there's like, the accuracy is poor,
Yeah.
like across the board.
Yeah.
And so I've sent it to them again
Yeah.
and then gotten a far better
Yeah.
report. Or where I'll get like, it'll say that it's a higher job fit for a bunch of sales jobs and then also admin at the same time. Where you're like, does that actually match up? Is that actually who? And then that's when the validation piece comes in to try to differentiate. So even if you were to get a summary that looked a certain way, once you start going through the validation and validating that it is saying who they are, to your point where they would say, oh, well, that's not me. You'll see that as you go through each line, you go, okay, what part of this is not you, and then have them defend it. So it's really almost impossible for them to like, if they do disagree, there's a clear reason why, which is fair enough, and you'll flesh that out, but for the most part, you can kind of flesh out.
Well, that's part of it, because the KPA is a tool to navigate you through the process.
Right.
It is not the answer of whether someone's a fit or not, right? And that's what drives me crazy is someone will, once I teach them about that job matches thing, that's the yes or no for them. And I'm like, no, that is like 10% of the process, right? And so part of it is once you get that job fit guide that kicks out, there's 4 huge chunks that you're gonna have to go through with it. The first one is the verification of the behavior. So we'll go through that and we'll role play and we'll show how I do that, but it's actually going through their behavior. And it's reading all about what the report says. It's allowing them to edit it. It's asking more probing questions. I take a lot of notes in this behavioral verification. And a lot of times, minimum, that could take 60 minutes. Sometimes it can break these 4 chunks, the verification, thought process, life story, motivation. Those are the 4 main pieces of your interviewing process. Minimum, it's 2 interviews. Sometimes it ends up being 3, 4 interviews for me.
Do you have like a packet of your verification packet?
Yeah, so the job fit consulting guide is the majority of it, but even when I was hiring, I would even get those like those 3-fold folders where you can kind of staple. The job fit guide is the vast majority of this, but when you want references, you know, you could put them in a separate spot. You could put, you know, the checklist right on the front so you know which candidates which way. But really, the checklist and this job fit guide is 90-something% of what you need. So that's why you need to staple together and go through it. So the verification will go through, but you're getting to know the candidate at a deep level to make sure their personality profile matches the role. Like you're learning more about that person than probably anybody that's ever asked them questions before. And I joked about it, but that's actually what the dating, when I ordered on my dates, that's wise, because it was so helpful for me to speed up the process on getting to know, right?
Super romantic.
Super romantic. We do it over candlelight.
Can't believe you get married. Your wife passed. Take this kick.
Or if I dinner, I need to take this.
Might be
It's
trying
gonna
to
take
do
about
that.
5 hours.
But we'll know if we can get married by the end of it.
Go into the flow.
The thought process is the second step. So sometimes you can combine these, but that's where thought process, we'll go through these questions. They're very open-ended questions. And these are a lot of the questions you're probably somewhat familiar with on how you interview. What's your strengths? What's your weaknesses? That type of stuff. We're going to navigate some best practices on how and why we do that. The next piece is life story. So we can even go through a little bit of a mock story on that if we can get the board to race. But life story is basically you want to learn everything about them. Okay. And life story is basically like resume on steroids. Like you're basically starting from when their last educational, whether it was high school or college, and you're going step by step through every other major event in their lives. How was it? What did you learn? What happened? What did you make back then? Blah, blah, blah. It could be anything. And a lot of times you navigate it professionally, but a lot of other random stuff pops out of their mouth. You're just learning based on their entire life story. Like even, granted, Tim likes to talk, one of my former team leaders, but I spent 2.5 hours just on his life story. Crazy. And the next one's
He's got a
now,
lot. He's got a lot.
and he was, and something to keep thinking back to. All right, the last one's motivation. So motivation, so that's where you're truly tapping into what's going to motivate them, right? You've probably heard of, all sorts of different ways of doing that, but I'll show you how I like to do it. And both of these you actually will do on a flip chart or a whiteboard so they can see as you're navigating through this, okay? And then once we finish that, we'll talk about these steps, which is data and perspective, which is a group interview. Once you've fully navigated your 4 or 5 hours with that candidate, you now want to see how they gel with the group. The group could be existing people. It could be people at the brokerage. It could be, your spouse, it could be your friend, like anybody that they might be working with, vendors even. You want to kind of see how they show up. A lot of organizations have, like Dave Ramsey's a big, I'm taking you and your spouse out to dinner with me and my spouse before I hire you. Like they want to just see how they click, who was it? Was it Tony Robbins that he would show up early to dinner and he would talk to the server and specifically ask the server to screw up the candidate's order. So when they brought the wrong order, he wanted to see how that candidate was he rude to the server? Did he just not say anything? Like he learned a lot of the scenario. So I actually just like to go to lunch with a bunch of our team members and I just stay out of it. Like I just go to lunch. Sometimes I won't even go, but normally I like to go so I can at least observe. But you do not want to dominate the conversation or direct it or whatever. You just want to see what happens, right? And then the next step is references. This is where you call references, right? And part of the process you'll see in here that you'll actually gather the references from them. They sign off that they're allowing you to call them. But then also you always go 2 or 3 deep. The people they give you to call, usually you want to ask who else, knows, Robert that would be worth me calling or talking to. And then you get that person. And then that's where you actually start getting some meat and potatoes of what challenges or strengths might show up, right? And it's funny when we've had people leave our Keller Williams leadership teams and they go apply at other market centers. Those market center leadership, like we just parted ways with a team leader in Orem and I replaced him and he's applied for a bunch of other team leader jobs out there and clear on his resume, he showed that he was a team leader. So those OPs, those market center leadership, almost every place he applies, they call me for a reference. He's also applied at a bunch of teams. He's applied at a bunch of teams, like 8 to 10 teams, like for leadership positions. Not one of those rainmakers have called me, which is crazy. And so part of it is just leadership. We go through so many, hard knocks that we learn to not cheat the process, but the 100% of our rainmakers are cheating the process. If someone just parted ways with someone, do you not think you should call them, right? If you had a tenant that just got evicted and now is applying to go into your rental, do you want to talk to that former landlord, right? Call your dang references. And then the last one is what we call the defense meeting. So that is where me as the consultant let me make this clear. When you're going through that interview process, you, the person that are hiring them, you have to navigate them all the way through. Why is that important? Because it's up to you whether that person counts or not, right? Like if I do the verification, you do the job fit, you do the motivation, you know, we come and talk about it. Like none of us got a full perspective of this person, right? We've had some people want to do that. They want to have the first interview and then they want me to just have the second interview just to think if I like them. If they have just a bunch of first interviews over and over and over, they're just going to have a bunch of great interviews. But you're trying to just link that process to truly get to know them, right? But the defense is basically where me as a consultant, Robert applied for my director of operations role. And now I have to have basically some devil's advocates that I've invited into my life that basically I have to prove why I think Robert should join our team, right? So if you have a partner, if you have other team members or whatever, I'm basically being the person that's defending the candidate, and all these other people are trying to convince me why I shouldn't hire that person, okay? Make sense? And that's where me as a candidate, that's why I said I have those folders sometimes with that job fit. If you're going through all that stuff in that job fit guide, in the defense meeting, that is your basically evidence of why you should hire that person. So I'm flipping through the page, well, that actually a great question, but this showed up, blah, 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 right? And then we'll move into the offer expectations. Okay, you guys good? You want a little break?
Got food over there? Got some sandwiches?
You good? You want to keep going?
Johnny, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
My question is, do you know, since you've got interest invested down in South America and some of our new expansion or our new international offices, do you know if there's an international version of the KPA?
There's not yet. Primarily because the vocabulary and the way the words have different weighted and the algorithm and all that that creates the verification results. The career visioning course outside of the United States actually has to just be the DISC assessment. So it's actually, there's an international edition of it that actually cuts out anything with KPA and they just insert the DISC and then we walk through the DISC. But they're actively, Spanish clearly is the first one they're trying to work on. I actually navigated all of our leadership through the career visioning process, and a couple of them that speak incredible English, I had them take the KPA and it just didn't work. It just didn't really work because the results weren't that awesome. So I had to just learn that we got to wait for the Spanish version of it. But the rest of the process was the same process I ran them through.
Okay, yeah, but you said that there's a DISC version that we think you'd recommend, the DISC?
Yep. The DISC is translated in, I don't know, like 100 languages. But I'm saying the actual career vision course, the job fit guide and stuff like that, actually there's an international version that just references the DISC in all of the different worksheets and activities instead of referencing the KPA.
Okay, thanks.
Good. Okay, you guys ready?
Keep going.
So this is the regional director job fit guide from when I took the KPA. So I match it up against the regional director role. Pulled this report, and clearly that job match, I've actually never gone through this one. I normally go through the OP or team leader because that's what I did the thing first on, but we'll go through this one. So the first page you're going to get is just a summary, right? So Jonny has an overall fit with the job of regional director. So the gray of every position that you run the report on, it will have this gray bar of where you want the behavior to fall within to be in the ideal criteria, okay? So clearly a regional director probably has to be on the high end of assertive for their job description, right? So I'm right smack in the middle, right? Spatial visualization, vocabulary, logical problem solving, rapid problem solving, sociability, I'm on the high end. So one step farther, I'm probably a little too far, right? And we'll dive into actual editing, why that might be. Responsiveness, I'm probably too high on that end, right? You want to be more in the middle. Adaptability, I'm probably a little too independent to be in a corporate type of position, right? Optimism, structure, and then intensity.
That's where the regional director really goes sideways.
I don't obey.
Yeah.
So that's where, this is the one sheet. So sometimes this is when I have those folders, I'll just take this out and actually just put it there. So when I'm going through it, sometimes I'll just make that a quick reference sheet. But then this also shows up in their behavioral report, but it's the job match review. So assertiveness, Jonny is enterprising, assertive, and he has confidence in his ability to take action, achieve goals. He seeks to influence people and to make a major timely impact. He welcomes the opportunity to take a leadership role in most activities. We'll pass all that. That's again, another quick style. So operating style, this is all the personal report stuff. So this is all the stuff that they can see. But now job considerations, it'll show job considerations, mismatch. So this is all the stuff that you want to review before you start that interview process with them, okay? Is traits, here's kind of a cheat sheet of, you know, if someone's low on the assertiveness, what kind of identifies that behavior, or high on the assertiveness. So high, you know, someone high on the assertiveness is determined, persistent, and direct, willing to move forward, take action, and solve problems. Someone on the low side of that assertiveness definition, they achieve goals through cooperation and good planning. They're conservative in action, move slowly to action. They're faced with obstacles, tends to stop and reassess before moving forward again. Blah, blah, blah. Thinking, all that's just pre-stuff to kind of get ready to meet. So now we're entering the job fit consulting guide. So this is such a playbook for you to do exactly what it tells you to do, okay? And I'll show you how easy it is. So A, how to use this guide. Again, it runs through that checklist that I showed you. And now the first interview that we're going to sit down with Robert on is the job fit verification, okay? So thoroughly review the job fit report. So it tells you to review all that stuff that we just said. Check your mindset. Stay neutral, curious, and listen. Watch your body language. Don't nod, agree, cross arms, lean forward or back, right? We're staying neutral. It's not a conversation. It's not a conversation. Other than asking questions, don't engage with him and share personal experiences. So now we're going to conduct the interview. Okay, so say Robert's Jonny literally gives you word for word scripts of how to even start the interview. Jonny, thank you for coming in today. The reason I wanted to meet with you is to get to know you better and understand some of the things that are important to you. At the end of our discussion, we can both determine if it makes sense to continue our conversation. Introduce the verification process. I'm sure you are curious about the Keller personality assessment you completed for us, and I'm excited to share the results. The report we have received describes your unique combination of traits. Each trait has beneficial aspects, so remember there is no good or bad combination of traits. My goal is to truly understand who you are and how you operate, and review and edit the report together to get a custom report that is all about you. You're going to hear some great things about yourself. Be proud of who you are. Ready to get started? Boom. So now we're going to go through these. So this is called the job considerations, okay? And these are the instructions for it. As we navigate through those, you're basically trying to just get a percent accuracy. Let's tell this is, okay? And it kind of goes through those. So the very first one, okay? So on a scale from 1 to 10, Jonny, how accurate would you say this sentence is? Jonny is enterprising and assertive. He has confidence in his ability to take action and achieve goals. He seeks to influence people and make a major and timely impact. He welcomes the opportunity to take a leadership role in most activities. So on a scale from 1 to 10, I would rank that personally a 10. I think that's spot on my behavior, okay? So what makes it a 10? So if I was the consultant, well, what makes that a 10 for you, Jonny? I don't know. I just feel like anytime a leadership position comes along, like I take it. Like I like leadership roles, major and timely impact. I like making big impacts, but I'm fast. I want to get it done for sure. You know, blah blah blah. Had I said a 6 to 9, right? What would you change in the statement to make it a 10? So a lot of times they'll just say words, you know, maybe this word is a little too strong. Maybe the way that this it sounded a little too overbearing to me. Maybe it was a little too rough. Like I'm okay to sit back and be a part of the team or part of the crowd or whatever, right? I would say 90% of the time I get 10s and 9s on all these. Rarely does someone actually give me less than a 9, maybe a 7 or an 8, but I immediately just start drilling into it, right? So part of it is, here's some probing suggestions. Dealing with people who are less assertive can be a challenge. Tell me about situations where this has occurred. Dealing with people less assertive for me is a challenge. So I'll tell you, where has that occurred? All my administrative people in my life, right? The hardest part of my job is waiting for everybody else to catch up, right? So how do I handle that? So how do I handle that is I've learned to just allow them to just own their job and give them space, right? Like when I'm in the scenario over and over and over, I become critical, right? And I can just blow scenarios up. So I've learned to just kind of let them fail and be patient. One of the hardest things for me is, like she said, is letting someone else take tasks on. Because I know I can do it better, I can do it faster, it'll be spelled right, it'll be whatever, right? But part of that is that creates a ceiling for me. So I've learned that I've got to allow people to flourish and learn from it. The other thing for me is basically I've learned to create other worlds, right? So I've got this business or this business, so I can almost like, okay, shut this kiosk off, I'm gonna go in this business for a little bit, and then I can come back and we can actually fundamentally build, right? A lot of my behavioral profile, when they're in just one business, they'll just keep exploding it because it's not perfect now, it's not perfect now, right? What are you gonna say?
One of the, you had mentioned sometimes, you know, majority of the time you get a 9 or 10 out of each statement. One thing that I've learned is reading out loud is difficult. It also words things in a specific way. So each word is important that you read them. So a lot of times if there's a misunderstanding as to like whether that's them or not, it's because they misunderstood one of the words in the statement. So I've gone back and said, okay, if they say it's a 5 or 6, I'd be like, okay, let me read it again, and we'll just go through it kind of word by word and really slow down saying Johnny's an enterprising and assertive.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you? What's assertive and enterprising mean to you, right? And then that way you could potentially flush out in that sentence or in that statement what it is that they didn't agree with versus they just kind of skimmed over the whole statement and they're like, that's kind of this because one thing stuck out. So
Yeah, the one thing you have to be careful of is you do not define things specifically
for them. Yeah, let them define it
Yeah.
for it. Yeah.
How would you define it or something? Or something? I don't know what that word means. What do you think it means? But just, just try to get as much as you can. Because a lot of times when you're defining something, you're putting your own bias and opinion on the way you interpret it. Tell me more. What's another example? Walk me through. And again, this is just one tiny little piece, but sometimes I could spend 10, 15 minutes just on one of these, right?
I find that people will give generalities and theories on how they feel about a certain thing versus giving specific examples. They'll really avoid giving a real walkthrough type example of how it shows up in their life. And so I'll go on kind of a carousel of that and be like, oh, okay, well, what's another example specifically where this piece came up, and then let them run with that as well.
So I've done this before where I just read the questions and then they just listened. And then I've done it where I gave them their KPA, the one I would give to them and have them read it with me. And when they would give me a low one, I'd say, well, which sentence did you feel stood out that's not you?
Yeah, most of the time I like to have it in my hands and me be reading it and me being able to take notes. That's part of it, why you got to read very clearly and slowly and come back to it every once in a while. If I determine that someone clearly is a visual learner, like I failed every test ever growing up, but I was an auditory learner. I retained like 10% of what someone reads to me. So sometimes I'd be like, here, you want to read this? And then I just bring it back to you. Like having them have the total report, because I want to focus on piece by piece, because it's very natural to be like, I want to flip through it. So just, you got to be careful that you're just not jumping. Yeah. Spatial visualization, right? Jonny can visualize three-dimensional structures and complex systems. He can think about problems in which there are multiple variables that are changing. This talent will help him with a variety of tasks, including engineering, technical, mechanical, structural problems. I would say that's like an 8, maybe a 9 for me. Again, I think I can, but I've also learned that sometimes I'm too inattentive to detail, right? So sometimes that word engineering or technical seem a little strong for me. I can visualize problems and all the different variables that come in, blah, blah, blah. So I would probably just be a consultant, just getting a little bit deeper, right? Tell me about one of the systems or procedures you use most often in your current recent job. What was the system? How was the system developed? How are you trained on it? Blah, 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 right? Getting really just in the trenches on
Do
some
you
of these.
feel like your whole job here is just to get more detail? Because people generally just want to blanket code and answer, and that's really overwhelming. Like you just reading that, I put myself in the interview and I'm like, what? Because if I wasn't sitting here looking at the screen and reading with you, I would have been like, same, 10% of those words made sense to me because I heard technical and engineering.
Yeah, even just a couple sentences, because there's only 2 or 3 sentences in this section. I probably end up reading 3 separate full times to most people.
But you're just keeping in mind your goal, like you're just trying to pick more detail. In the end, that's your whole goal, right?
I truly just shut my brain off for this interview for the most part. Like once I get someone to this point, I'm committed to going through the whole verification with them. Like, I'm not gonna stop in the middle and be like, I don't like that, get out of here, you know? I wanna go through the whole process, so I truly just shut my brain off, and it's hard for me to do, but I just shut it off, and I just want to just observe. I've stopped thinking about, are they the right candidate or not? What's for lunch, you know, or any other thing. I just truly just try to zone in on it and just get to know them so authentically. And again, part of that is when they end up being the right candidate, you built such an incredible rapport with them because you've told them more about yourself than probably anybody ever has, right? But yeah, you're right. Zone in and just down through it. And part of it, talkers will just talk and they'll be fine with it. And the non-talkers, you just gotta keep digging deeper, you know?
And you just let them go on as long as they will.
Yep.
Seems like a nightmare. Apparently I'm a horrible leader.
Yeah, one of the things I mentioned tomorrow, because the class that I do tomorrow is this, in case somebody's coming to this, but it is right here, these top 10 empire building tips that I've learned from Gary Keller. Like I've just been in so many different avenues with Gary, whether it's agent, leadership, or whatever. And one of those is being a student of behavior, right? Like one of the things I've learned on how to build an empire. You can't take pictures unless you're showing what
I'll be out of town tomorrow, but I wanted to do that so bad.
you can take.
Will it be recorded?
Yeah.
Okay. And can I take a picture of that?
Yep.
Fine.
So part of it is truly like everything that I built, one of the top tips that I've learned observing Gary and all the successful people is you have to be a student of behavior. And being a student of behavior is so hard for high
Translate
behaviors.
that. What does that mean?
Most people I think like, even early in my career, I knew I had a little different behavior, but I still thought the majority of people thought like me, or one of the same things. And I had to go through that process. But part of it is like when you truly, like, you just think about the human experience, right? Like every human is born in a total different circumstance. Their upbringing, their environment, their parents, their likes, their hobbies, their political views, their opinions, their beliefs, their religion, whatever it is. Like, it's just crazy how different of an experience one person can have living next door to another person, right? And it just totally makes up a totally different, like, inherent behavior that everything's kind of created, right? Even hereditary, their genes and their DNA and all that sort of thing. So part of that is just like how different and different perspective and everything people have. It is very difficult for the natural human to truly, like, authentically learn about someone else, right? And so part of that is like, for me, like truly learning like strengths, weaknesses, you know, authentic behavior, natural behavior, you know, what skill set people possess or whatever. Like your job as a leader is truly understanding all types of people and being able to select which spot on the bus is the most important that they're going to excel at, that's going to be contributory to the entire empire, right? Like I think intelligently, I could be good at a lot of stuff, but over long periods of time, under stress, under responsibility, under duress or whatever, that's truly where natural behavior comes out, right? Like if I was, you know, I could go build a great spreadsheet and do a bunch of analytical data things, but like if I had like a timeline of stress and people were bugging me and stuff, like I just go crazy, right? And that's part of it, you got to find natural spots of behavior for the right roles that are the best, right? And part of that is you have to like listen and truly just navigate through the process to really learn some of the behavioral process. So like Gary Keller is one of the people out there that moves the fastest in the world. Like he has built 100+ companies, right? Like he's the only guy that I've personally like met that's a billion, multi-billion, right? And part of it is he did this giant event. This is one of the stories I tell tomorrow, is being a student of behavior. One of the things he did like 3 years ago is he had this mega agent exclusive event down in Austin, Texas. He had to have a minimum of $10 million production. We flew into Austin, sat in the big old room of the convention. There's probably like 2,000 or 3,000, 4,000 people or something across the company. We sat there and he's like, I'm going to navigate you guys through one of the most important things that I could teach you right now. And he sat down and for 3 hours, he role played someone's KPA. He role played with Monica Reynolds, someone's KPA for 3 hours. And it was the most boring ass meeting I've ever been in my life. But I was just like, and I'm like, are we seriously doing? I'm like, these are the top people of our company, you know? But again, like he's just trying to prove the point that to speed up, you have to slow down, you know? And part of that is it's so contradictory to natural salesperson, let alone our IDs behavior, to slow down and do this, because you just want to go. and you want to use instinct or judgment or whatever to make it. But that's the biggest problem, is just slowing down and being a student of behavior, because a lot of times the people you need most are the people you're getting forced to slow down to go find and connect with, you know? And even behavior, like the DISC, right? D-I-S-C, right? High Ds are just driven, fast-paced, bottom line results, right? Like if I'm a high D, what's the fastest way you can get on my bad side?
Take forever
That's
to
my fear.
do something, not be able
Waste my
to.
time.
It's being taken advantage of. So you waste my time, that's a way. You waste my money, that's a way. You waste, you know, my whatever energy, that's you get on my bad side fast. Or you're out of my way, right? High eyes.
You don't have time to have a bad side.
Yeah. High eyes, right? High eyes, interpersonal, social butterflies, extroverts. My partner plays one of these. He just like whips around like a tornado. Like he could screw up a transaction and they still love him afterwards. Like somehow, like everybody just likes him. Student body president, right? What is his biggest fear?
Not being liked.
Criticism, like someone not liking him. Like he literally lose sleep. And I'm like, F-U-G-G-M. F-U-G-G-M? Bug him?
No, yeah.
A high S, steady, consistent, you know, just true all through. Like, what is their fear?
Non-efficient.
Change,
Totally.
right? When we are doing something pretty well, and me as a team leader comes into my MCA's office, and I'm like, changing this, like my MCA just, her mind explodes. She's like, no, you know? So I'm part of that, I've had to learn her behavior, and I've had to learn, like, when I see anticipated change coming, I have to warn her 1,000 times before I finally tell her we're making a change, right?
Oh my God, that's my daughter.
Yeah, high Cs are your analytical, like your very accurate type of people, you know, your accountants, your lawyers, and a lot of our friends are brokers are high Cs, you know, very, very detail oriented. What is their biggest fear? Being wrong, right? Being wrong. So learning all these behaviors as a team leader, when I'm up teaching a team meeting and I have a power moment, right? My high Ds, I got to do it as fast as possible, deliver as much value in 5 minutes or less, right? My high Is, we got to rah, we got to hug at the beginning, you know, I got to throw some jokes out, I got to entertain them, right? My high S's, I got to tell them what we're going to go through. I got to go through step by step, you know, I got to then tell them what I told them, you know, I got to give them deadlines for things. When I'm teaching a class and I go off the manual, immediately my high S's are just like, what is going on? They start looking at each other. They're like, this is the worst class ever, right? My high C's, I have to be 100% accurate. Like if I'm going through stats, on the bottom, I've got source, National Association of Realtors, realeestate.com. Because again, as soon as I say something and I make up a percent stat, like, you know, 90% of people, 90% of the time are awesome. Where'd you get that stat? You know? So part of it is you got to recognize behavior, you got to get really good at it, and then learn to put them in the right spots, right? So even me, I can be erratic when I communicate. My S's and C's, I got to learn to like bridge. Right now, we're going to transition to talk about this, you know, this, you know. What were we going to say?
I was just gonna say, it's interesting what.
She asked a question and ran. What were we talking about? This?
Well, we were talking, I like the personality stuff, and I totally dove into it maybe in my 5th year of my career. And you know what's interesting is the more that you learn about personality types, it makes you a better, person, first of all, like better mom, spouse, sister, whatever, like it definitely makes you a better person. But then when you go out into the real world and you're actually like paying attention, because you're paying attention all the time, like you can practice this every single day. Yeah. Which I do all the time. Just stand behind somebody when they're in line ordering their food. It's like the worst thing ever. And I do that example all the time. I want to choke somebody.
This is your first time ordering food?
Yeah, order a burger. It's McDonald's.
You look at the menu before you became first in line?
I don't eat there, but whatever. So yeah, no, it's for real. But what's really great is when you have people come in and they don't understand themselves, you're just thinking to yourself, oh, bless you. Yeah. Because if they only knew, you know, and once you know about it, I feel like I have like a responsibility to just be better because I know better now, you know. Anyway, it's fascinating. This whole thing is what drives every single relationship. Yeah. Business, personal, whatever, it drives every relationship.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's the cool thing about this process. There's been multiple times that once we kind of get through this, whether it's the middle or the end, and I decide they're not a candidate and navigate that, you know, professionally and communicate that to them, almost every time they are still 100% grateful that they went through this process, right? I've had even people call me up months after they got a different job that they learned that might be a better fit for them. They're just It's just cool, because you're teaching them, but you're also gaining something, you know, for you, so. Logical problem solving, which one was the one that I was way off?
No.
So it was,
Your adaptability.
oh, yeah. Structure, intensity, responsiveness, adaptability. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how accurate would you say each sentence is? Jonny is a strong-minded person who will tend to have his own viewpoints and opinions. He can be influenced by strong arguments or practical reasons, but he will not alter his views just to avert conflict. Because that tells me who I really am, right? And the behavioral profile wants it a little less like that, right? So I would say that's a 10. I would say that's a 10. So I'm guessing we've all been in a situation where we've been asked to offer someone one more chance or go to an extreme just to make another person happy. How have you dealt with these types of situations in your past jobs? Tell me about the most recent time this occurred. Compromise can be both necessary and helpful in many work situations. However, there are times when we may not want to compromise any further just to keep someone happy. Tell me about a time when this happened to you in your past work. What was the end result? Blah, blah, blah. So even for me, right, like I would want to make sure, like, all right, are they still people oriented enough or whatever? Like, can that be too harsh or can that be too hard? Sometimes when that's taken too far, that might be a negative. So I probably would just go through scenarios of like where they gave people chances, but was in a very structured, you know, accountable type of pathway or something, right? Either way, so that normally, this process takes, because that's just a 1 or 2 sentences. We're still in the behavioral verification. Those are the job considerations. We just went through all 9 or 10 of those, right? And we asked 1 to 10. We asked more probing questions, deeper questions, blah, blah, blah. The other thing I didn't point out is this bottom piece. You don't read these. These are considerations for you as a consultant, okay? You may sometimes miss social cues. You may sometimes unintentionally irritate people, right? So those are things to have in mind for me when I'm asking more probing questions. Has there ever been time that you've actually tried to hold someone accountable, but it didn't go well or something? You know, just try to ask questions that might validate whether those considerations are true.
Question, when you're going through all those questions, that they're ranking 1 to 10, are there some that, depending on the job description, it would be better if they were a 2 or a 3?
No, because this, where it was ranking it up, that tells you whether it's a job match or not. This is just their actual behavior.
Oh, okay.
So this is always high probability that they're going to shoot higher.
Yeah. So for every time you've done this, most people are in that 8 to 10 range.
Yeah.
They'll say, oh, I'm a 10, I'm a 10, I'm a 10.
Unless they didn't listen to what the statement was.
Right.
Right, and then that's whenever it's off and I go back through it, they're like, well, I guess I'm an 8 or
So
an
this is when you
You know
can
what I'm
tell that
saying?
they
Like-
didn't focus
Yeah.
on the test or like.
Or like you, where you rattled it off and you just missed a couple of pieces, you're like, wait, I gotta slow down, go through it one more time, just so they can hear each part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and even like, and part of that is there might be a little bit of they think they're someone that they're not, you know? Or they have an undue pressure from external forces of trying to make them be someone that they're not, right? And part of that for me, like my first probably 4 or 5 years in real estate, I thought I was more of a high I. Like I think I even pretended to be more of a high I, that I wanted to be more of a people person. When I realized that I'm more of a balance of the high D, you know, task oriented with the sociability concept, right?
I think something that you said at the beginning, and it states in there, where it says, it doesn't mean good or bad, right? Like, if you're more adaptable or less adaptable, neither of those things being on either side of those scales doesn't mean good or bad. It just means this is who you are, and then how do you use those strengths into that? So kind of setting the tone. I've had success with setting the tone, saying, you know, just be open to that. This is nothing's good or bad. Just be, you know, is this an accurate statement?
Yeah.
I like that it says be proud of who you are, like
Yeah.
kind of take ownership for all of it too.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm in a partnership on my team, right? So that was, this learning about behavior was such an important thing for us our first 2 years. Because part of that is we basically were sort of like each other. You know, we went to the same school, our missions were by each other, you know, we got into business. So for at least 2 years, we tried to like unintentionally pretend to be the same person and fill the same role in our organization. And he is a high IS, right? Just social butterfly, but I have to constantly be like, Clay, that's not worth your time. Now run this way. So I have to like re-point him which direction I want him to run. And that's where it took us probably a full 2 years to realize that we shouldn't be exactly like each other and we should just truly show up authentically where we're at.
So what is he doing with you when he's self-correct, like when he's correcting you?
Let's be honest.
I'm really curious.
You don't
I
have to
really-
play.
No, I really am curious.
Yeah, because I definitely navigated to more of, he doesn't have very much analytical pieces of it at all. So like I am a lot more of the business planning, I'm more of the recruiting, I'm more of the leadership roles. Like I like to build through people. He just like to go and do a lot more. So a lot of times, like when we have any sort of conflicts in our organization, he's the guy that actually is really great at just like softening the scenario. You know, if we have like we had a tenant that just called us on one of our properties, some old person or a tenant that just hates everything about the place and wants everything totally changed. And I'm like, if I talk to him, I'm gonna kick their ass out. You go talk to him. And now they totally love him and he didn't have to do anything to fix it, right? But I'm also the other guy too, that like he has a big challenge on conflict, right? And he doesn't want to put difficult conversations or even more difficult for his high sociability behavior. So a lot of times I'm the guy that has to either have a harder conversation, or I'm also the vision guy too, you know. I'm also sometimes the guy that has to like, I really have a better ability to step back and look at the business, the working in your business, working on your business type of thing. He has such a hard time to step out of it because
Do
he
you
is
feel
just
like you're
stuck
like
in
the
it.
focus and the director and he's
Yep.
like the executioner kind of?
Yep. He's our sales machine. The more I can just build the org chart, you know, around him and just do it for him and just let him go sell his little heart out. Where I'm more like the general of the army kind of guy for sure.
But recognizing that without one, without the
Oh,
other,
yeah.
like is important. Just because you have the more dominant role where you're just more the like, hey, we're doing this,
Yep.
and this. Let's just be honest, like the business wouldn't be there without
Oh,
his
yeah.
personality plus, right?
Because he also ends up
So
being
good.
the sales director / broker. So all of our agents, they come to him for sales support, navigating deals. Like he's actually like in the trenches leadership, where they come to me for other types of leadership. And it ends up being, two peas in a pod for the most part.
So most teams that are successful that way, do you typically find that those are the good?
Partnerships, it's a lot that way for sure. Like even him, like when we first started real estate, right? Like I was probably better at sticking to a schedule, prospecting, lead generation, like for him to just consistently come in and somehow block off time. But again, he had way easier time of just naturally getting stuff out of his SOI because he was just nicer to people, I guess. I don't know. Like, and so we kind of learned to complement each other a little bit on that. But even if you're solo, you know, a lot of times you can find that in maybe whatever your complementary behaviors, either the sales or the leadership you bring into your operations team. So, yeah.
I have one more question. I don't know if you're gonna get to it or not, but like, so aside from the behavioral side of hiring, where does it come into play? Like if you're looking at single moms or moms with kids or schedules that way that may pull other areas, like how does that come into play when you're looking at hiring?
Yeah, we'll probably get into more of that on their life story, their motivation for sure. But it just all comes down to what is my expectations of the role versus are they going to be able to meet them or not, right? And part of that is we've got all sorts of diversity on the team. You know, a lot of times our moms are always kicking their butts. You know, but that's agents. It's a lot easier to be flexible. You know, my Hub W2 employees, for the most part, we're really flexible. Like people travel, people have kids and stuff, but for the most part, like 40 hours a week is my expectation. So even if they have to give and take a little bit, that's fine. But
Do they work in office or at home?
my Hub members do.
In office.
Yeah, anybody that's on payroll, and they like coming to work. Like we built a fun environment. Like we go to lunch, you know, yeah, like it's a cool environment for sure. We've tried to do a little bit of the remote work, but it's just, I don't know. Agents can be very, they come into the office very rarely and they can just go around, do what they need to, and it's a commission type of scenario, you know?
But having an admin hub to go to that is also a fun environment where you're getting some human interaction, but it's not distracting agent. Because that can be a detractor of going in, he's getting distracted by all the high agents. Right?
Yeah. It's not necessarily they're performing their job duties, it's all the other ancillary benefits of being around other sharp, talented people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you gotta be careful, you're not distracting each other either, but like sometimes just some of the best things come out of the hours, you know, in between what we're supposed to be doing, you know? Okay,
to be fair, you guys have found that your admin team, better production in office.
Yeah.
Not flexible, like work from home when you want, show up at the office when you want, as long as work gets done, it's more like in office hours.
Yep. So we just have one big office for our hub, like all of the administrative people, and we have one big office for our ISAs and lead coordinator and stuff. So they're shared office space because they like hanging out with each other, you know, so they're in there super productive. They're in their minimum, 9 to 5 is my requirement. I said that like 7 years ago, and they're there by 9 and they're walking out the door by 5. Our ISAs get there a little bit earlier, but also, Fridays, like if someone has to go do whatever, like we're incredibly flexible. But at the same time, I'm not a micromanager. That's not my duty too. I just want to hire talented people.
But you hired a micromanager probably, right?
He's
Someone
definitely,
does if he needs to.
he just leads by example.
Right.
Yeah.
That just comes from setting the expectation
Yeah.
and knowing that you're not gonna be there to babysit, you're either gonna be there to work or you're not.
Yep.
That's simple.
That's why that director of operations is
Big
so important, because they set the tone for your administrative people, for sure. Which can go pros and cons. There's definitely things that he's done that created, weaknesses of the culture that we created that we've had to try to correct, for sure. Okay, so that was this, right? That was just the tell me more, 1 to 10, blah, blah, blah. This is now operating style. This goes from 2 to 4 or 5 sentences, but same type of concept. But it's just different topics, okay? So like communication. So this is my operating style, my behavioral operating style with communication. So on a scale from 1 to 10, Johnny, how would you rate the accuracy of the statement? Johnny recognizes the benefits of friendly, straightforward communications. He is naturally expressive and articulate and has good persuasive aptitude. He is usually eager to share and promote his ideas, and he tends to be undeterred by opposing viewpoints. He likes to get to the heart of issues quickly and decisively without being sidetracked by details or distractions. I would put that at 10 if I were to say that. Again, they don't give you the suggestions here, but you should be in a cadence of drilling deeper if you want to. Well, tell me how that shows up. Oh, that last sentence, how I like to get to the heart of issues quickly and decisive. I hate fluff. Like, just get to the chase. And there's a lot of times when I start a conversation and I start seeing the pattern of language that is just like they're dancing around something. It's just tell me what you want to tell me. It's okay, decision making. Ideal environment. Ideal supervisor. This is a great one, because they're basically communicating to you who their ideal supervisor is. So let's go from 1 to 10. Johnny, how accurate is this? Johnny's ideal supervisor is comfortable delegating and providing him with considerable freedom and latitude to organize and prioritize his work independently. Johnny responds well to leadership roles, and he likes to organize work groups and make decisions. He expects to be accountable for specific outcomes, but he seeks the freedom to initiate and implement projects on his own. Because he becomes bored and restless by an absence of progress and too much predictability, he benefits from new assignments, new challenges, and timely opportunities for upward mobility. I'm a 10. That's a 10 for me. I totally like clear, precise direction, delegate it, and I'm going to just own the crap out of it and run 100 miles an hour. That's how I work. That's my ideal supervisor. Someone that tries to manage me, micromanage me, be in the trenches with me. Yep.
Tell you what to do.
Yep. So those are all operating style. They're really cool because it teaches you how they operate. How to communicate, what's their ideal environment, what's their ideal, supervisor, even what you were asked about, ideal environment, right? Johnny enjoys interacting with people and getting things accomplished. He is at his best in a socially active and change-oriented environment. He is easily bored with routines, the status quo, and slow-moving processes. He welcomes responsibility for tackling new projects, for actively directing a variety of tasks. Because he is naturally quick-paced, motivated to expedite processes, he has good aptitude for managing deadlines, blah, blah, blah. So sometimes that can show up a little bit more advice on how they actually like their work environment to be. And then the last part of the behavioral verification section. We're on section 1 still of the interview process. Don't look at that clock. Did you look at the clock? Okay. The description review. So this is just one giant descriptive review of someone. So a lot of times this is where you're seeing duplication show up. And after each paragraph, so I would read that first paragraph right there, I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, how accurate would you say that is? And then I'd write 9, 10, or whatever. And you'll see a lot of the same language, but it's worded in a different way. So if someone ranks something a 7, and then we come to this, and now they're ranking it a 9, all right, like clearly their behavior might be a little bit more pronounced than they thought it is, And then boom, we're done. So this is something that you do with them right at the end. So overall, Robert, this whole, verification process we went through, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this report? 9. Okay, well, what do you think was most accurate? Well, I really thought it was cool that it thought I was decisive or whatever, right? What is the least accurate? You're doing just verifying the accuracy to see how that shows up. Okay. We'll break down? You good?
Let's break. Take a break.
Okay. Good. All right, let's take a 5
It's
minute
like
break.
Jonny. Take a break.
I'm good, I can go all day. All right, let's take a 5 minute break and then we'll get rolling.
This is a working letter. It was so good. All my kids are home. Grandma bring it down. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. It was so hard. All my kids came home. They all went to their college.
Keep going.
Yes, and my son, I think he's gonna have it in January. I think he's gonna do, and then.
What?
And I actually only, like, brought her in to my business. Or I will, I don't
Like, I'm not a sale.
Yeah.
So that really has been that really is a big. Yeah. And
I had a good one. You don't have a good one.
I had a great. I know. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And everything's busy, you know?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
I'm excited for Joe.
Yeah.
He's so thank you. I like that he was like, being outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Johnny, I have a question. I have an appointment that I have to leave to, so maybe you're gonna get through this. But I have a question. Like, when you're hiring family, but when you're hiring like your family or people that wanna come to your team, and there's that dynamic there, do you still put this through the process? Because do you ever get people like, they're not right here, just for a chance, because of that dynamic?
You just, yeah, Gary, it's a trip hazard.
I know, I'm just like, don't wanna.
Gary's got a giant cautious thing out there about her family. Part of the challenge is in general, it's not just family, but you bring seven into your organization, and then they turn into family. You like them, you love them. What happens is you basically just get held hostage a little bit by them, because you don't want to let them go. So you end up just building a box around your business that you're just never going to have, right? And I was really clear about that.
So-
Actually, my little brother is my lead coordinator on my team. So part of that is you just have to make sure, all right, like, is this giving them an opportunity or is this charity? Thought process. So again, here's the thought process. Thought process is just open-ended questions. So Robert, what are your strengths? What would blank, your previous manager say are your strengths? And just let them start talking about their strengths, right? What are your weaknesses? Give 2 to 3 instances of when you were trained really well. Them describing how they were trained probably is helping you learn how to train them, but also how some of their behaviors show up, right? Give 2 to 3 specifics of when you were managed really well. How do you set goals? Robert, how do you set goals?
Intentionally,
Yeah.
over time.
Wing it. Yeah, and actually fundamentally seeing how much thought they put into goals, what is their process, like tells them a lot about their experience, like their intentionality, like what their motivation is, right? Describe a major career decision you've made and the steps that you went through to make it. Think of a major career accomplishment you've made. What happened? What was your contribution? How did your contribution impact the outcome? What lessons did you learn? How long would you be willing to fail before you succeed at a task? Robert, how long would you be willing to fail before you succeed at a task?
Once, maybe twice.
Half the time, maybe?
Half.
Look at it, I run. What do you think the real answer is?
I'm not very tenacious, so if I continue to fail or feel like I don't reach the success level that I expect of myself, I tend to avoid doing it again. I'll come up with a reason to go do something else. That's true.
I think most people, don't they naturally just want to say though that, well, I'll just keep going until I get it. Are people really honest when they tell you that? Because if you're in an interview process, you're not wanting to put yourself in this negative light, right? So it's kind of like, I think that's why asking for an experience or asking for an example is maybe a little bit more beneficial.
Well, to me, that's why, because people want to tell you who they think you want them to be, right?
Right.
And part of that is like, they probably had a lot of energy in that first part of the behavioral verification, and we probably just wore a lot of their energy down. And part of that is they're probably just telling you who they are at this point. You've probably connected, they've probably been truthful, you've gone through a whole piece. And I think that's why this thought process is second behind that. Because I've never got to this point where I felt like I was still in the phase of them BSing me. Or just give me the answers, I think they just start talking from their heart quite a bit.
Yeah.
Bill, who are the 3 people you most like, admire, respect, and why?
My business partner, Todd. He has traits that I don't have that I appreciate, and it makes our partnership good that way. My wife, because she motivates me. She knows how to motivate me and what I need to hear. And, third one, and this is, I'm gonna just quickly came to mind, Robert. I love how, honestly, Robert cuts through the chase, and it's been funny watching him over the years, because at first he really cut to the chase and he's kind of he's melted that out over time, I think, you know, as we've grown. But I appreciate that about him. And I like that about him.
Thanks, man.
So what did you just learn about Bill? Those three people you admire and respects. What did you learn about? Them first? Yeah,
He surrounds himself with people he respects.
yeah. I think I learned he's a team player, right? Like, I don't think he's probably an overbearing high driver that's, you know, needs to have the limelight all the time. Like, clearly he can work with cooperation pretty well. What else? What about what he said about you?
I don't know if I would have been in the top three, so I appreciate being in the top three. I know it's a tough question in the middle of it, but see the perspective on me, watching me grow, knowing that you're watching me change, and know that I tend to be abrasive and trying to, because I think cutting to the chase and getting to it is abrasive at times.
And I like that personally. Some people
Yeah,
have a hard time with it, but
right. So
Well, a lot of what you admire is who you really are, or potentially who you want to be,
Okay.
right? So even you cut the chase, he might want to be more like that, maybe, you know?
or not as much like that, maybe, and change that.
Okay, what defines a good performer on the job for you?
For me,
Yeah.
showing up every day, effort, intentional effort. Focus, even if it's just 4 hours, 3 hours, whatever you have, if they're intentionally focused and they give it, that's good performance for me. So it may be a small amount of time. I think you can waste a lot of time in this business, and most real estate agents do. They spend 8 hours, give yourself 4. Be really, really efficient in 4, and then enjoy the rest of your time.
What else makes a great performer for you?
Personal growth. I like to see the growth in my team members. That is why I do what I do. I like that best. Production just comes with it. I think that is a byproduct of becoming a good, realtor. I think that's just part of it. Food performance. Just like showing up and being there getting it raw every day. Effort is probably my number 1 thing, is effort.
Yeah, she didn't just describe a good performer, she just described what she values, right? So when you're interviewing a candidate, she just told me who she is, right? I already know she's a high D, right? She wants pure intention, right? She doesn't want to just waste time. She wants to show up with intentionality, right? She just literally laid out like what she values, right? And that's such a good question, because then when you go to the other one, they're just telling you hopefully what they don't want to be around, right? Okay, what kind of work environment are you most productive? What are your long-term goals? So it's already starting to lay in what that motivational interview is. Why do you think you're a strong candidate for this position? This is a good one. From everything you've learned about organization, tell me how you can make a contribution. A lot of times that tells me too is how interested were they in the position. You know, I have people like, they knew everything about our organization, you know, they at least looked this up, you know, other people like, I actually don't know what I'm applying for, you know. Yeah. And sometimes that screening interview that we talked about, the very, very, very first screening interview is kind of a mutual recruiting type of thing that you're actually seeing if they're a good screen candidate, but you're also having to give them enough information that sets the stage for this, right? This is the role, blah, 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 right?
That was the question I have, is like, I know you're not wanting to feed them information, but obviously you want to give them the job description,
Yep.
like your expectations. So where is the balance there?
Yeah,
I mean, are you literally giving them a list up front, the job description thing?
yeah, hopefully that we're being clear in the job advertising, what the description is, what the areas of accountability are, like even that job profile I showed you where it's at, like a lot of that I just put out there, because I only want people that are connecting with that to apply for it, so waste the, you know, the funneling time. A lot of that first screening interview to me is 50-50. Half of it's me screening them, and 50% is me almost like trying to inspire and motivate them and, you know, telling them how awesome the position is to get them to have the energy to go through this process with it. You know, so I explain how, you know, how awesome the organization is. And that's why sometimes it's a switch for them, because I'm a little bit into normal Jonny. And then when I get into the interview process, I'm now neutral Jonny, that already hopefully maybe build a little rapport there, but the interview process, I'm already in the, you know, normal mode. Question for Jonny. We talked about that. So I throw my ads, when it's an administrative salary position, I throw my ads everywhere. KSL, job boards, you know, I throw them on LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter.
I think I had to do that one.
Do you put a cutoff?
Yeah, we usually have a mental timeline. Sometimes we'll put the date in there of how fast we want it, but normally we throw ads out within a week. Hopefully we've recruited enough candidates to kind of go through that process. Job boards are great too, but a lot of times, you know, even in this market, depending on where unemployment's at, like a lot of proactive behavior is what it's going to take to go find some good candidates, for sure.
How many people are you narrowing down for the interview process?
Well, normally I want to get, you know, 30-ish plus applicants, you know, maybe the, you know, resume I knock out 2, 3, 4, screening interview, I get it down to like 10 or something. Ideally, I'm only seriously after the first, once we take the KPA, I'm only starting the KPA process with my top 3 candidates. Because it's a lot of time.
So 10 people took the
Yeah.
KPA
Yeah.
and you're only interviewing.
And maybe I like have another short meeting with them or something, but like hopefully by the time I hit this thought provoking, I'm at 2, maybe 3. Yeah.
Right now in this time frame, it seems like there's a lot of people that don't want to work. I don't know if you've advertised lately, how much of a response are you getting?
We haven't necessarily in the last, we've been hiring ISAs that we've had a pretty good response, but I think it's actually going to benefit a little bit. The whole great resignation thing, 57% of people are thinking about making a career change, whatever. I think our industry is a lot of the targeted, you know, what they want. We think we might be susceptible to that. I just think a lot of people are going to migrate to us, you know? So like you think about the hospitality industry, the retail industry, restaurant industry, like those are a lot of great candidates for the real estate industry, right? They're very service oriented, they're very systematic, you know, they're great with people. So a lot of times we're going to get a lot of influx from there. And you might have to proactively go find some of those people for sure. But all right, so thought process. So that's thought process. So that we went through pretty fast, but that should be a solid hour-ish of going through those questions because you really want to see how their brain operates. You want to start seeing what they value. You want to start seeing, you know, who they respect. You know, like even who they were trained by, how that was successful. You know, all that sort of stuff. Okay. Any questions on this?
For the expressive, they'll just keep going and going and going, so you don't cut them off, you just gotta let them just keep on going.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, a lot of times, I would say most of the time, I'm putting thought provoking with the behavior verification. So if I get through those 2 in 90 minutes, that's successful for me. Very rarely do I pull off the thought process. Most likely those first 2 are together and I try to do these last 2. Otherwise, these last 2 end up being separate appointments too. Okay, so this is the life story. This is the life story. Okay, so basically we're going to just start. It's basically you do events right here, events, dates, and sometimes even maybe what you earned in those professions, you know, so you can kind of get a feel of that. So how even they start. So what we're going to do now, Robert, is write your professional autobiography together, starting with the last time you were in school and moving forward. It's like your resume, but we're going to go deeper than that. This is a chronological narrative of the defining events in your life inside each event. I'd like to know what you did, what happened, what you learned. Let's start with the first event. Robert, let's just role play this for a little bit. So when was your last formal education? Could be high school, could be college.
2009.
2009.
Cal State Fullerton graduation.
What month was that?
May.
May? Okay, and you graduated Cal State?
Cal State.
Okay. What'd you graduate with?
Degree in political science,
Your political science?
focused on political economics,
Cool. Was it a 2 4-year degree?
4-year degree.
4-year degree?
Bachelor's, yeah.
Cool. Are you glad you did it? Cool.
All stats, loved it.
So if you were to like, if you were to kind of cap that off, like what's some of the biggest things that stick out to you about the whole degree, I guess?
The intention, when I first got into school, the intention was to go to law school. And so it was probably 12 months before I graduated. After taking the LSAT 3 times, realized that I couldn't get into a top tier law school with that LSAT score. And so I abandoned the idea of going to law school.
Hmm.
And so, but I didn't want to change my degree major. I felt at that point I might as well just push forward with the degree and finish that and then figure it out after that.
So I probably would drill into more about that, like why you want to be a lawyer and all that. Say, all right, say we got past that. So what's the first thing that you did after you graduated Cal State?
I was working 2 jobs at the time and I had saved up $10,000, and in August of that year, I went to Europe.
Cool.
I
2009.
traveled for 2 months.
Europe for 2 months. Where'd you go?
9 countries. So Great Britain, and then I just made kind of a big circle loop around all the way as far as Prague, down to Munich, down to Italy, down into Rome, then back over to Spain, back up in France.
That's probably a big trip to summarize, but what sticks out to your mind when you think back about that trip? What'd you learn from that? What was great? What was not?
Big cities are big cities everywhere. It doesn't matter, you know, LA is a big city. So is, you know, my wife and I went to Thailand on our honeymoon. It's a big city, right? Whether you're in whatever country, they're all really similar. It's just the smaller towns and those little, you know, it's the outlying mid-sized cities. That's where you get the real culture. And I think you learn more about the area. And there's a lot more, there's a lot better education I got out of not being in the big cities than I did going into the smaller towns.
Right.
Yeah.
Explain that. What do you mean?
So we went to I went to a couple of cities in Belgium that wasn't Brussels, which is a big city. And you just get to meet the locals there, realize that lots of Australians travel. So pretty much young Australian people travel all over Europe when they graduate from college as well. But you get to see small towns. Like there's a city called Bruges that's like it's like Venice, but it's in Belgium, and not very many people know about it. But a full-time, you know, people from Belgium that speak French and like 9 other different dialects of Belgium that I would have known if I would have just gone to Brussels, and they all speak English and French. So
Did you go alone on this trip? Huh? Did you go alone on this trip?
I went alone for the first month, and then I met a friend of mine for the second month, and then we finished it up together.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. So you finished that probably like October-ish, 2009?
Yeah. I guess it would have been October, November-ish. Yeah.
So what's the next thing that you did?
I ended up getting a job as a manager for a restaurant. So I stopped serving tables and got into management and training.
In October?
That was probably around January of that next year. So I just went back to working, because I was working 2 jobs. I went back to working just 1 serving job, just worked full time and started trying to figure out what I was going to do next.
So were you a manager of the same restaurant, or did you move?
So I moved up, yeah, in that same restaurant. BJ's, it's a corporate restaurant. They're regional. I guess they're nationwide now, but they were just regional at the time.
How long were you manager there?
I was manager there for almost 3 years. So it ended up being like 2.5, almost 3 years. Yeah.
So it took you all the way to like 2013. So manager, that was probably your first professional leadership kind of role, where you had to kind of manage people and work with them?
Yeah, I went to a military school, so I had practiced military leadership, which is probably why I was cut this quick so much. Bottom line up front is how they teach you in the military, is you just tell exactly what the expectation is, and there's no fluff around it. So that was the first time I had been able to get into a leadership role in the public world, or the civilian, I guess. It's really the best way to describe it. It's not the same, it's different. And so that was, my first experience.
Great. What did you learn about managing their BJ's?
Everybody speaks a different language. Everybody speaks a different language.
What do you mean by that?
It just kind of like when we were talking about behavioral analysis and your interest in that, it goes in when you're into a leadership or a management role, inspiring others to do a job that you would think the money was what the inspiration was. Like, it was always my understanding, you're showing up to a job to make money. But I quickly realized that people just show up to a job and then hopefully they don't have to do any work to make that money. So getting them to carry their weight and finding different ways to do that was actually a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be. Yeah.
So it's different levels of work ethics, different personalities.
Yeah, and then how I communicate with them versus how they need to be communicated with. And then when you throw in actual bilingual language barriers, all of our chefs, all the cooks spoke Spanish. So I had to learn restaurant Spanish, but also when I talk fast and I get to the point, it comes off as really abrasive, especially to that culture. So I didn't realize that there's a big learning curve that I had to do, figure out.
Yeah, I imagine it's pretty fast paced to that.
Oh, yeah. That's what I love about it.
So even if you were just reflecting back at that 3 years, like how would you even say that you grew in that time period?
I would say I got a really good understanding and a lot of inspiration around what working parts of a business, because I didn't go to school for business. I went to school for political theology and a lot of different other things, not necessarily business. So I got a better understanding of business, but also kind of interests me the most. That part of it was the most interesting part, how the dollars and cents shake out. The efficiencies in the restaurant are unique because you have product that's dying, right? You can't sit on the shelf forever, but then also labor is your biggest expense. So there's a couple of different factors you have to kind of figure out.
Were
It's
you
not always
responsible for the profitability of the P&L and stuff?
Yeah.
So you're-
I was so as each manager, just like an entry level manager, I just did schedules, but then I was a senior manager where you start learning about the P&Ls and not necessarily being fully responsible, but you're just an assistant to the general manager, but understanding and having to understand all those metrics. Because it's a corporate restaurant, they're probably a lot more complex than a lot of other restaurants that I've been in the past. So it was really interesting to see their organizational part on that. And then as I got into the bar management, because then I just became the bar manager. So then I was managing the product and the ordering for all of the bar alcohol specific and managing the bar staff and team and learning how to capitalize on profitability with using alcohol instead of food. So that was really fascinating.
So there's several levels of managers that you can.
Yeah.
So what's a manager in 2010, the entry level make back then, and what did you progress to at the end of your management experience?
Yeah, I was making more as a server. When I was serving, I was making between $150 to $200 a night. So I probably made around 53 or 55,000 a year at the most when I was serving. But then I had to take a paid deduction, so it was like 44,000 entry level, and I think I made it to like 48,000 or something before I left.
Even as you took on more responsibility. And
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah. It was a slow. That was probably the biggest thing when I started moving up within that management, seeing the delta and the jump that I was going to have to make to start making money that I wanted to make. The ceiling's low for the total money that you even could make at the most executive level in a corporate environment like that. And the road to getting there was really long. So that kind of inspired me to figure something else.
Well, I imagine you could go backwards and pay from the server to take on more responsibility of management. Like that's double negative sometimes, but you clearly like to do it for some reason. What chose you to make those decisions, I guess?
I was a training server, so I would always help all the brand new people that would come on. I'd want to show them the ropes and help them figure out how to manage their tables, and customer service was always came really natural and easy to me. So like helping people know how to talk to people and identify, the one that's going to pay the tip, right? Like knowing how to satisfy the one that's going to pay the tip. So I really liked teaching that. And so then getting into the management role, it allowed me to kind of work with the servers in that way. The most important thing to me getting into that management position was to learn about the business. So I looked at it as I'm not going to ever learn any of these parts if I don't make that the full-time role. Where the serving piece, I had already figured it out. I had reached really the top level that you could go as a server and like a salesperson, right? You were just pick the same kind of organization. So until I took a step out of that role to learn something else, it was more just to start learning something. And being a server gets boring.
Okay, time out. So clearly, just going through that, we just even hit one, right? But even having learned that there were several management positions and different stuff, I probably would have gone back and be like, well, let's go back. What was that first management role? And then actually go through each step to see what did you learn each step? What was some of the increased responsibilities? What was some of his motivation? But even just, again, this is 10 years ago, right? And sometimes you're going 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? Sometimes you just, high school was yesterday, so it's gonna be a little faster, but what did you just learn about him going through that experience? What did you learn about Robert?
He wanted to advance and learn, he was willing to take a step back in order to go forward where he thought he wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
He's also a team player. He's also wanting to help his staff that he's managing to make sure that they can excel in their job.
Yeah. What else? Yeah, a lot of the triggers I heard was the whole pay thing go back, like clearly he has a servant heart, right? Like it was for the bigger good that he chose to do that. And he clearly has this like an obsession with helping people, right? Like even being the lead server and just like a lot of it was about the decision he made was for others, you know, or the people, right? I think clearly him learning a lot about the different languages and stuff like that, like he clearly like progressed quickly in different scenarios. So like he's got a high motor, like he likes to do a good job, you know, and people start coming to him for his leadership, which probably makes he's immediately shown that he's got a leadership track record, even if that was his last position, right?
Would you, jumping way back, when Robert wanted to, in college, wanted to go into law school, would you sometimes probe even deeper, like what kind of lawyer would you want to be so that you can kind of figure out
Sure. Yeah.
that mindset?
Yeah. And I think that's a classic story of people going to school for someone and they probably switch directions, you know? So like where was some, like I grew up wanting to be an FBI or CIA agent, you know? So what was the thing that I thought that I was going to get out of that? What made me make those decisions? What made me change those decisions? What? The other thing too, I would have backed up and done for sure is he worked a lot during college. So understanding that, you know, and understanding that he can juggle multiple things and just, you know, he clearly paved his own path, all that sort of stuff. So cool. Anything else you learned from that?
Well, I didn't know you tripped around the many countries. I think that says a lot for us being adaptable. I could not go somewhere where I didn't speak the language, like that would just freak me out, not know where I'm going. Like, I'm pretty spontaneous, but I think planning, it also says he's a planner, because he planned out 9 countries, which I clearly am not. So he puts a lot of thought in an experience, and the experience is important, because nobody trips for 2 months.
Funny thing is you flush that out. I had a one-way ticket.
I knew he did.
I had my first 2 hostels. I had my first 2 hostels planned. And then I didn't have a plan after that. I was gonna pick whatever city I wanted to go to after that.
Yeah.
And then when I got to France, I'm like, shit, nobody speaks English. And I didn't, I was like, I had like a full meltdown in my hostel one day, like, this is gonna be way harder than I thought it was gonna be. Because it was a complete lack of, I'm just gonna figure it out, and forethought of like what could go wrong. I wasn't looking at any of those things. I was only looking at where all the coolest places on the planet that I could go walk and see for myself. Like that was like my.
You know, I think that is such a telling thing for our businesses though too, because guess what? Like, I don't know, like when I had to step into the role and just take over my team, because I had a business partner that went away, I didn't know either. Like, I had no idea, and I had to take on the roles where, you know, he had these roles and I had these roles, and all of a sudden I had to take on the other ones. Like, we're just gonna figure it out. Like, I've always been that, hey, we're just gonna figure it out. And I think that's kind of one of those traits that
High D temperament too, though.
where you just double failing thing, you know, when you're asking about, you know, how many times till you give up? Like, when there's no other options, there's no other options. Like, we're not going to fail. Like, it's not gonna happen. I might screw up, but we're not gonna fail. So I like that you just kind of took off and went somewhere. It's nice.
I read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I wrote $10,000 and I put it under my pillow.
Yeah.
And
You can read that today and you'll still get a different message.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
That's the amazing thing about that book.
Well, A, thanks for at least starting to role play, but B, the Europe thing's cool. I definitely encourage my kids to do that, because I'm sure you learned a lot. But Steve, back to the class, you can see how as a consultant, the tone kind of shifted a little bit, right? Like, I feel like those first 2 pieces are work and these next 2 are fun for me, right? Like getting to know someone and granted, like it's way easier for someone to talk about their track record, their history. So like most of the time they just start random, right? And it's really easy to just kind of keep directing it. So it's also like a lot easier to kick out of the neutral thing, and you can actually, oh, that's so cool. All right, why did you, and you can start being you and connecting again, because it's not going to interrupt the pattern of what they're trying to communicate to you, right?
Do you still want to keep away from offering personal, like, interactions? like
So
that?
I never, like even HR wise and stuff, like I never try to pull that out, right? Like I never try to ask them family questions. I never try to ask them, trauma questions, whatever, but I'll tell you almost every time something comes out like that. Because again, you're talking about what some of the most, things that they remember the highest,
But do
right?
you ever offer information about
Oh.
you in an interview to them?
I still, a tiny bit, just because, they get on a roll, and for me to interrupt and be like, oh, I went to Europe once, you'd be like, thanks, I'm talking about myself, So it usually just becomes a barrier for you to even get in and tell stuff, but I would say that is so cool, like that, I'm happy that you did that. Or if there's something sad comes up, like, I'm sorry, like that sounds terrible, can you, do you want to talk about more, or whatever, A lot of it's more you extend some feelings versus you're trying to like interrupt and tell your side of the story,
And you gotta be really careful when you start bringing in personal stuff, and then all of a sudden, that there's between 1 and 2 people, and then you don't hire them. Hopefully they don't come back and say, well, he didn't hire me because of this and this and this racial thing that.
How do you handle that when someone brings up something emotional and they start crying in the interview?
Well, I'd say probably half the time people end up crying this, to be honest. And part of it is when you're just looking at a resume and you even see gaps, it's hard for you to start throwing assumptions or judgment into it. But when I go through this and you find out that their husband had cancer and they truly had to step back to go support the family and stuff, and this is the time they actually see it, and then you see how they can kind of rebound and they go full throttle back into something. You learn a lot about character, even some of that personal stuff, but you still just try to navigate it professionally and be like, oh, I can't imagine, I'm sorry to hear that, how did that go? Just most of the time they'll just like keep going through it, There's several times I've had to get up and go get tissue boxes and stuff, because this is their life, But a lot of times, like, no one's actually ever chronologically laid this out for them and actually like taught, like even that, like, what did you learn from that? Like that sounds like a terrible experience. Like, how did you overcome that? Like, how did you grow through that? And you basically just laid out every little step of their life and what they learned from it. Like, you just laid out their autobiography, and that's why a lot of times I'll do this on a flip chart, or I'll do it on a board and I'll take a picture of it, and then immediately after I'll text them a picture of it, because it's just like their heart's on the table right there. Or I'll rip the page off, I'll take a picture, rip the page off, and I'm gonna take this. This is great. Okay. And again, like people are so used to just like speeding it up. Like he just laid out 3 years of managing BJs, and he tried to just lay it out in a couple sentences. And a lot of times you have to just take them back to pull back the layers, because most people just generally don't want to get to know you that much, but this is the one time in their life that you actually are authentically caring about everything that they've done in their life, But again, that can take, and you can see that, and especially if someone has a 15, 20-year career, even that team leader candidate I was telling you about, I went through, like, he went off for 2.5 hours. This is the funnest thing for him ever to do, is just tell his whole life story, But part of times your memory just can jot you around and bring it back to chronological. Okay, so the last one is what? Motivational. Okay, so this is more of an interactive experience. This is a motivational. This is one that I even just pull out, and I continuously do this with my staff and people that are already in my world. But they used to have another name for the future self. We used to call this a future self. So almost every year I redo someone's future self, where they're kind of laying out what that looks like. So actually, do you mind role playing with me? It's Tyler, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you mind role playing?
If you dare.
Okay. Get the tissues. So normally I just divide this up into 4 quadrants. Okay. And basically, Tyler, me and you are going to fast forward 3 years from now. Like, we're closing out 2024 and rolling into 2025. It's crazy to think like that, right? So 3 years down the road, I'm going to ask you, what has to happen for you the next 3 years of your life for us to be sitting down 3 years from now? And I say, hey, Tyler, how's the last 3 years been for you? And you say, Johnny, it's been awesome. Literally the best 3 years of my life. What has to happen for you the next 3 years for you to be able to authentically tell me that, okay? And we can kind of go any direction you want to go, but I want to even predetermine 2 categories for you. So one is like business job, just kind of real estate or whatever your business job is. And then I want to talk about the money. And then these other 2 boxes, we can kind of go any direction you want. Okay, so let's first start with job. Okay, so what would be awesome the next 3 years for you professionally?
Working less and making more.
Okay, working less. Working less, and we'll talk about the money thing, but working less. Okay, what else has to happen for you to be able to say awesome?
Definitely just having more general focus with my time when I'm good at time blocking, but once I am in that blocked time, what I'm doing with that, I want it to be the same every day and just a lot more consistent.
Because kind of now you feel like you're just sporadic or chaos.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So what job are you in? What's it even look like?
I would love to just be a listing agent and working with only clients that I want to and pass off everything else.
Listing agent, a choosy listing agent. Okay. Cool. What else has to happen for you to be able to say awesome for your job?
A bomb office, like my home.
Bomb office.
I told you if you dare.
Okay. So that's not just like the whole office, it's in your office.
My
specifically?
space.
Okay.
I like having my own space.
Sweet. Okay. Anything else has to happen next 3 years?
I feel like if those things happen, I would be happy.
Okay. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Okay.
Okay.
So working less, or you even said what you're actually spending time on is incredibly focused, right? So what do you mean specifically? Like, what does that look like for you?
So specifically, I really want to get a 17-day touchdown where I go in and I go into my task list and I just knock out the things on that list and the people on that list. And then I know that mentally I'm done when I do that list.
So that means you only work 17 days, or that means it's a touch program that you're just totally executing?
Oh, yeah, it's just a touch from, like, I'm touching the client every 17 days in a different way.
You're saying that's all you do?
That's all I do.
So what
And
does
then
that,
go on my appointments.
so what does that look like on a day, week, month? Like, what is your time spent in that job?
I mean, I'd love to work, so I still would love to work like 25, 30 hours a week,
Okay,
or I would go bonkers.
25, 30 hours. Is that mornings to you, or is it afternoons? Or
Yeah,
is
I
it
would
like
love
more
mornings.
flexible over 8 hours?
I mean, I love flexibility, but mornings are great,
Okay,
not early mornings.
but just averaging somewhere around 5 hours.
Like morning, but not too early, but not too late. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
After I've had my coffee, you know.
10 to 4-ish every day.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So doing your very specified, lead gen or your 17 touch in the morning, and then you just got maybe an appointment or 2 during the afternoon.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. What do you get from that? So say that's what your life looks like. 3 years from now, I come, say, hey, Tyler, how's it been? Say, it's awesome. And I come and you're literally working 10 to 4. You've got your mornings really structured, and then your afternoons just got your appointments scheduled, and it's just great. You're working only with your listing agents. Like, what do you get from that? What does that do for you?
Well, I seem like a really social person, but I'm actually not. And so work gives me like a way to be with people. Because otherwise I have nothing to say. I'll enter a room if I have no objective or if I'm not there for work. I just stress out. Not social, I'm quiet, I'm awkward, I don't want to be there. And so this kind of gives me that way to like plug into my work like the rest of the world, I guess, and have a place.
Cool. So what is the listing agent choosy specifically? Like, what is it, like only listings, clearly, only sellers? What type of sellers are you wanting to be at?
I'm luxury,
Okay. What's luxury mean to you?
let's say over 800.
Okay. So 800 grand plus. Maybe a little bit more, prices go up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So you're only listing $800,000 houses. You kind of more clearly designed yourself to be a luxury listing agent. What type of client does that look like to you? Is there a specific client that
No,
other perspective?
honestly, I can't think of one specific type of,
It's more the quality of the home to you.
yeah.
Okay.
I like different types of personalities, because I like to try to adjust and see how I can do.
And variety.
Yeah.
Cool. So what's the bomb office look like?
Cool. Everything. No, just kidding.
Oh,
Spacious and large and windows.
spacious. Large. Windows.
These are my wildest dreams we're talking about.
Got a fridge in there.
Obviously, soft,
Okay.
soft fridge, yeah,
It just feels like you're home away from home.
yeah,
I get that.
a lamp,
Huh. A lamp.
a chair,
I love lamp.
very specific chair.
Yeah. Fuzzy leather.
I don't know yet, but it's specific. And gold. Yeah.
Cool.
Aspects and glitter or something.
Cool. So Tyler, say 3 years from now, we're sitting down and you say, my job is awesome. And we've literally accomplished this, right? Like you're working less, which means, you've got your mornings, really focused on lead gen, you've got your appointments. The quality of home you're selling is just awesome. It's 800,000 plus, right? You're working exclusively with luxury in business. You can go and feel just really at home when you're at work. It feels like it's an extension of your, your place, but it's just your getaway too, right? You have your own private office, large windows, you got your fuzzy chair made out of leopard skin. How does that make you feel?
Great,
Great?
yeah,
How else does it make you feel?
important.
Important? What does this do for you?
Definitely provides like a sense of security for myself and independence,
Why is that important to you?
because I have not been independent in the past before, and it's just not a good place to be. Not a place I want to be in again.
Security, feel important, you feel great. How else does it make you feel?
Like I can provide for my kids.
What kids you got?
Two.
Cool. Anything else?
They do all of it.
Oh. Okay, thank you for role playing. So awesome, so that was great, right? So you see the 3 phases that you navigate someone through. And part of that, she had a lot of this thought through. Sometimes you're pulling it out, but you can see you're basically just laying out, what does that look like for you, okay? The second step is you have to ask, what specifically does that look like, right? And actually, you're very lasered in, because sometimes I just want to like my job. I just want to work with, great clients. Get really clear.
Oh my
Because even totally. I'll be working, other people like if I could scale down to like 80 hours a week or whatever, right? And so even me as a consultant or even hiring someone, like, all right, like let's figure out a pathway, but even this, right? Like an office, like, man, like if you could be the person that could just really create a simple plan for them to help accomplish that, like, that's great, But then you see what's important to you, what does that look like specifically? And then you clearly saw how I start tapping into emotions. How do you feel about that? What does that look like? Why is that important to you? And a lot of times I'll even have 3 colored, that's why I tried to do it black and such, but I have 3 different colors. So it helps me stay in those zones. What does it look like? What specific, tell me more about that. And then the motion is a different color. And then you go through these other ones. So money, we would have gone really clear what that means for, like how much does that look like? Sometimes passive income, net worth, rental properties, investments, all that sort of thing. And a lot of times you like to separate these. A lot of people like to put them together, but the reason you want to separate is because, you want people to be focused on what they're the best at, what they love, what energizes them, what they're great at. And money can be just a whole other area of life, right? And then these 2, you don't want to really direct them. You want them to take what, 3 years from now, Robert, what would be awesome for you? And once you get these two out of the way, it really forces them to start dipping into other areas of life. It could be relationships. Relationships, you know, it could be, I just want to get married, you know, all right, great, let's talk about that. What's that look like for you? Well, I want a strong, you know, blah, blah, right? Or they could be kids, you know, it could be more time focused again. They could be like, I just want to travel with my family 4 times a year. Okay, well, what does that look like to you? Is that like a day trip? Is that like a 2-week trip, you know? And laying that out, you know, it could be health. A lot of health ones show up, you know, but really just like the first 2 that pop in your mind, just let them go.
When, I can't remember, maybe I checked out when you said that, but money was on your board, that wasn't what she had said, this was your.
Yeah, I said job and money are the 2 categories I for sure want to go through, and the other 2 you can take in any direction you want to take it.
Okay, so when we're talking about money, that's a really interesting topic, especially when it's real estate agent.
Yeah.
What do you find, because if they're new to the business, they don't know, right? And they don't know what they don't know. So I guess you would find out in their past job performance what they were making. That's why those pre-questions are so important. Because when they get in there and they say, well, I want to make $1 million, and you know that they've been making $25,000 a year, like we're talking about like a reality check here, like in your, you know, 3 years, if the number is 3 years, you know, you want to make $1 million.
Yeah.
How
part
do
of
you
it.
navigate that whole like
To me, I look at it more of how big is the agent? So, you know, are they small or are they big?
Like having money, but it wasn't in the right balance that she needed.
Right.
So we had to figure out how do we actually, you know, give her what she wants, you know, so part of that is you're just helping people process through that and actually just you stepping out of your bias to truly see what they want.
Why are you tapping into what they feel about their roles and their emotions in this? What's the purpose in that for you?
Part of it is you start seeing trigger words, right? So even when you get through all the areas of life, you know, like even like a single mom or something, right? Like they've got kids and you might see, you know, security or independence or whatever pop up. But when I start seeing commonalities, you know, I'll actually start circling some of those commonalities and be like, after going through this, you know, some of the common things that I've circled, it seems like independence is really important for you the next few years. And then, you know, that's where emotion can get started. I'm so sick of my ex, I want to string them and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, like, I honestly.
How do I help you do that?
Yeah, how do I help you do that, you know?
Cool.
But Johnny, I noticed this too, is you basically drilled down what Tyler's big why is. If you look at it, you can sit there and go, I know why Tyler's down real estate.
And you probably get there in all 4 boxes, like I would assume.
Yeah.
So you're gonna see the common denominator out of all that.
Yeah.
And that's what you want.
Yeah, and part of it too is it helps separate, you know, the words that are coming out of the mouth for goals from truly the emotion. And sometimes they're in alignment, and sometimes it's your role as the coach to either put them in alignment or help them, you know, figure out which one's not in alignment, right? And a lot of times it's just, you know, people don't remember what you say, but they remember how they feel, you know, and that's why a lot of this is getting so emotional, just to really truly get to the core and the soul of what's the most important to them, you know? Because I've set goals out of like my brain or my ambition or whatever. And once I even got, you know, past it or even on the journey of it, it wasn't fulfilling to me, right? Because the research shows, Gary's very clear about this, the research shows that happiness comes on the pathway or the journey to fulfilling a goal, right? So part of that is if they're connecting their soul to a goal that doesn't mean anything to them, their journey is not going to be filled with joy and happiness, right? So part of your goal as a leadership is you're really trying to dig in and find out what's the most important for them, what's their purpose, what's their big why, what's really their goal, because putting them on the right journey is what's going to create the most happiness and, you know, business success, you know.
So, quick question on the money section here. If you're interviewing someone for the admin role or TC role, for example, where it's automatically got a set salary, say $45,000, $50,000 for the year. And you say, well, what would you like to make? And they're going, oh, I would make $100,000. But you're like, that's not the role. I mean, what does that tell you? Now I gotta figure out how I can make this person 100,000, because after 2 or 3 years, if they're still making 50 or 60,000, is that fear of them they're gonna go leave to somebody else that will pay them 100,000. Now I gotta go back and train someone else again. What does that, when they say that to you, when it's a specific salary role? I mean, buyer consultant, buyer agent, listing agent. I mean, the gates are open. It's how hard you want to work, or how smart you want to work in order to get that $100,000 paycheck.
Yeah, and that's a very deep question, but that is the responsibility of leadership, right? That is the role of blending science and art on carving out, you know, authentic, you know, security-focused compensation plans, but also that have tremendous upside. Like I said, I'm a very big fan of low to medium base with as much high upside if they go out and perform. So every role in my organization, we tried to structure in a way that we're getting them a good salary, but again, it's probably just meeting their bare minimum needs, but it's tapping into the goals of the organization, tying their role specifically into how they're going to help accomplish the role in the organization of the, you know, that, and then having really great compensation plans that they can go earn. So like at the very beginning, transaction coordination, like my first admin, right? He was very motivated to help us close more deals because that's how he got a bonus, right? And so that's why we blew up from 60 to 120, because he connected the dots, you know. So that first year he probably did make $50,000, $60,000, right? But then even some of our other roles, like my marketing manager, that one's been our hardest to figure out, right? Is how do you bonus them like that? Like an ISA, we have all of our ISAs on base salaries, and then they get 10 to 5%, depending on what type of lead it is, 10 to 5% of the closing of any appointment they set that ends up going to closing. So they're very motivated to set very real great buyer and listing appointments that transfer to agents, and then they even mutually help us hold the candle because they want to get to that closing line. And then every deal they close, you know, $500 check for them. So they just want to close a bunch of deals that they set the appointments for, right? My marketing manager, we pay her a little bit bonus on leads, you know, but part of it, we want her invested into like getting us good deals at close. So even agents, so we pay her a little bit of a bonus on every agent SOI closed transaction. So part of that is she's very motivated to get as many leads for our agents out of their SOIs that move on to closing. We pay her a really big bonus because I want to really motivate her to build our team database. We've got 1,000 people that are not directly tied to any agent on our team that are just loyal to the organization, but she's running the 36 touch program. She's even assigning our ISAs to call the quarterly phone call and touch them. So those people are loyal to the organization. So if I had an agent that left, you know, I'm never losing those relationships because we're really trying to build that core team database. That's the mistake that we made in the past, is I would serve someone up to, you know, Billy Bob, my agent, he's so awesome, and our entire systems was built around building our SY relationships with that agent, and then they leave, even contractually, you know, those are my relationships. But again, people follow who they like the most, right? So we had to start figuring out how to protect that and bring the power and control back to the team. So every team database that closes that she's kind of helping, you know, coordinate, I'll pay her $500. So she's got to go, she wants to close 300 team database deals next year. All right, great, go make $150,000, right? Great. You know, even my director of ops, director of sales, you know, even my MCAs in the office, like a part of it is you just gotta, that's what I was telling the gal that left, you know, the team, the leaders in our system that have the biggest businesses, the most opportunity, and just great leaders, they do three things very well. This is what one of our former KW CEOs told me once in a meeting. So number one is they are really great at setting a vision, right? Setting a big vision. Number two is getting buy-in on that vision, like getting buy-in on that vision. And number three is systematically holding them accountable, okay? So part of that is you've got to have a vision for that person and how to fit into the big goals of the organization. You got to like get buy-in on that vision and motivate them to go crush their role. And then three, you got to systematically hold them accountable. And then, yeah, you've got to have a compensation program that's there. Like Mark Willis, that was our CEO for a long time before John Davis, took us from like, what was it, 15,000 to 80,000. I don't know what it was a monumental piece of KW. He came, and when Gary was taking him through the career visioning process, Mark Willis told the previous CEO probably made, you know, several $100,000. But Mark Willis, in the interview process, it came out that he wanted to make $1 million a year to be the CEO of Keller Williams. So Gary's mind wasn't like, oh crap, I can't pay him that much. He basically just immediately started reverse engineering. All right, where does our company have to be? How big do we have to grow until that role can make $1 million? And then he just laid out the plan. Like, all right, you've got to get us to 50,000 agent count and these things. Here's your comp plan. That's exactly how you can go make $1 million in this pattern. And he did it in like 2 years.
So he's just turning it around on them and saying, okay, well, that's your goal, this is how you get there.
Yeah, agents are easy. Like the top agent on my team made $300,000 last year.
How do you reward a director of ops? Great question, Karen.
Because my director of operations is actually out of TC, right? Like he's delegated the TC, he's delegated the listing management. So a lot of his is just other fundamental systems. He does all my QuickBooks for me, but a lot of his is just a leadership role. So number one, we pay him a salary. Number two is I actually pay him 5% of our net profit. So I want him really invested into our finances of our team. So after like 4 or 5 years, I converted some of his bonus structure into a net bonus. So as soon as January 1st rolls around, he's gonna be texting like, hey, when do you want to go over December's books? And then we go over all expenses and then we boom, 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 our net profit. So he's also my advocate in all the other people. So they're not spending money unless it's going to return a profit for us. The third one is that transaction fee. Because we charge a $395 transaction fee, and our main goal is we wanted to cover our transaction coordination. So it actually pays for our TCs, and anything left over that is his bonus. So these other two comp plans are outside of that, and then our $395 fees. So we make anywhere from like $8,000 to $10,000 a month in those transaction fees. And again, legally, those fees can't dump into the profit of the team. Well, if you ever got audited on it, if you charge a transaction fee, it has to actually be paying for fundamental transaction coordination services. That's why you're paying for it. A lot of agents just charge it to make more money. It actually is just there to fund the increased level of our customer service and experience. So say we have like $8,000 of expense through our TCs 1 month, we made $10,000, $2,000 just becomes his extra bonus. So he makes a salary, he makes the TC bonus and the profit bonus. So. And we've helped create other opportunities that isn't necessarily a stream of income from our team, but hopefully Eastman's counting that as value of our organization. So, okay.
Is that a TC bonus monthly?
Yeah, we close the books every month. So his profit bonus is monthly and his TC bonus is monthly.
So on that on that 395, you said that you pay your coordinator and then the difference?
So the two TCs, their salaries and even their bonus structure that he's created all fall within that income source. So our two TCs are paid for out of that. And then anything left over is his third bonus.
Okay.
So really, I just wanted him to take ownership of, because when he wasn't in charge of that fee and we just put it on there, we say, hey, agents, go collect it, you know, we were at like 40% collection rate. And as soon as it said, hey, anything left over of that TC fee after we pay our TCs, so not only were we not funding our TCs, it was costing us more money out of the general budget. As soon as I said, hey, anything left over of that fee, you're now the only one that can waive that on a transaction. Agents have to get approval from you. You're the only one that can waive it. We went from 40 to 85% in 30 days And it was an additional like $6,000 of revenue, because it immediately became a bonus he was focused on, you know?
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. So part of it is we're structuring a business too, so we're starting to go down the road. He's so efficient now that we're actually, which we were being careful of, but we're actually starting to allow that department to do TC services for a couple agents that are not on the team. That will basically just be a business within our business, right? Same thing with ISA, same thing with our marketing manager, same thing with some of our coaching programs, whatever. Like eventually you just start popping out other profit businesses that can fund the whole department. So, cool. And then you get into all the group stuff, offers, references, but we kind of touched on that. Okay, any other questions? Well, give me some ahas before we leave. Did you guys learn? What are you gonna implement? What are you committed to?
Just being more of a neutral personality for the process instead of controlling everything.
Yeah.
Going through the whole thing, not trying to shortcut it. It's hard, it's so hard to not want to shortcut it.
And you have to be the annoying, consistent drummer of that beat.
Mhm.
Like a team leader, like even if you do cheat it, lie your heart out and tell people you don't cheat. You have to be the one that holds the rainmaker responsible for it, because it's
Yeah.
such a powerful process, but it's just so easy to just be like, I'm gonna be part of it.
I totally agree. The one-
And then there's rewards, there's a few that get rewarded off of doing it shortcutted.
Yeah.
And then that's the outlier everybody wants to look at. You're like, well, they did it without doing that.
Yeah, agents, like when I bring agents on my team, because it's so easy to hold them accountable and they produce, like I cheat the process for that, right? Any of my salaried employees, I can't cheat the process, right? And especially that first hire, you think it's a simple one, but again, it'll either be the foundation for you to go build a team like mine, or you'll just consistently get in this like hamster wheel of repeating the same stuff. And once you get that, then you can actually start building upon that. And even like Cameron now, he's fully trained up. He does this for all the TCs. He does this for our marketing people. Like I don't even do it for any other secondary positions on our team. I just hold him accountable to it. And then I'm on the fence of, being devil's advocate of why we hired that person. So, yeah. Cool. Was this helpful?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.